It's day 2 of the week. Tuesday is here. Welcome on the AM show. So here's our lineup for today, just to give you a fair idea of what to expect. Shortly, I'm going to be serving you the news. Right after that, Bobby Banson, a lawyer, a free-speaking lawyer, I should put it that way, will be joining us for the news review as we get into the latest, give you the scoop from the newspapers. But right after that, 2 major issues we're tackling in our big stories. The first having to do with the economy, in fact, the banking sector, so to speak. Now, the Bank of Ghana has raised its basis points in terms of its policy rate by 150 points. Now, that brings to the total increment 29.5%. In fact, just between December last year and February this year, it has increased by over 1%. What does all of that mean for credit, for lending to businesses and to individuals? It only means that it's going to be tougher securing loans, and also that the interest rates are going to be much higher in an economy that is already reeling from the harsh circumstances. Well, we'll be getting into that all-important issue this morning together with our guests, economists among others, who will be giving us details of this. The Bank of Ghana, by the way, is doing this to cure the problem with inflation, which is still pretty high. But will they succeed? And what will this mean for business in Ghana? We'll bring you the scoop on that. In our second major story, we'll be turning our eyes to politics. And here's why. Former President John Dramani Mahama has said that he needs to come back to power to stabilize the economy. That is why he's putting forward the NDC and his candidacy. But the question is, with all the woes that he faced in terms of the economy, is it something we can really look forward to? Can we latch on to his promise? Well, this morning, we'll be getting into that all-important matter comparatively between the two sides and what we can expect from the former president as he speaks of stabilizing our economy. In sports, though, yesterday, the Palancas Negras of Angola locked horns one more time with the Black Stars of Ghana. It took the effort of a certain Bukari Osman to salvage the situation, to save us, grant us a draw, and keep us atop our group. But what has been the performance of Chris Hughton so far? What can we expect from him? Some key changes he made yesterday that turned the tide of the game after we went 1-0 down. What is your thinking on our new manager for the Black Stars? All of these line up for you this morning, so just stick and stay with us, and we'll bring you the finest of it all right here on the AM show. Up next, though, let's serve you the news. Welcome on the news. In our first story, 2 nearby communities lobbied that a school by government be set up in their territory. One community was more persuasive, and so the school was established in their community because they had a much bigger population. Instead of sharing the school facility, the community that lost the bid to get a school built on their land decided to boycott the nearby school and rather chose to send their children to another school which was a good 2 hours away. Jojo Kobina delves into why the people of Japido and Tadando in the Pandai district of the northern region intermarry and trade but cannot share a school.
Upon a time, a community called Japido in the Pandai district of the northern region welcomed a group of people who later formed another community called Tadando. The 2 communities lived side by side, traded, intermarried, and related so well together. There was no school in the 2 communities, so they decided to establish an informal school. They hired the services of a teacher to educate their children. As the number of children grew in both communities, the government decided to establish the school for the 2 communities. This was some good news. But it was at this point that the communities disagreed. They all wanted the school built on their land.
When the school was about being established here, Japido wanted the school to be in their land. because they claim they were here before Tadando settlers came. And when that wasn't done, they refused to bring their children to the school. I think if we meet the community elders, we may get the reasons from the horse's own mouth.
So I went to Tadando to hear their side of the story. Kajo Samuel is a community leader at Tadando.
No, say school I'm ever be Tadando no. Nti mo na ye mpanyifo, mo na di kan betena aha nti mo ma kwan say o ma di mo kura de den ade aba etan na ha. Nti stade mo ye den o mo mba. Nti nti na mo mba.
The people of Tadando softened their stance and said they wanted a school built in Japido, but based on the large number of children in Tadando, officials of the Ministry of Education decided to set up the school just at the boundary between the two communities.
The director of Pandai no aba frɛ mo set stade. Nkan first school say Japido ni Tadando primary school. Na first school dey nsi fimfim. Nti wo say Japido ko mo person frɛ school say Japido primary school. Anya din nti me say ade. Nti mo first school no Japido Tadando ndi hia school asa na yere na hia e. School no wa Japido a yetar no for ebeko.
The people of Japido wanted a school built on their land because they were the first settlers, so they decided to boycott the nearby school and rather enrolled their children over 5 kilometers away. Their children walk over 10 kilometers daily to access school. The children are not happy with the situation, but they have no choice.
My parents told me I'm not going to Tadando, I'm going to Balai, but the time in school here, in school Tadando, they fight. She told me to go to Balai.
Do you want to go to Tadando?
No.
Why?
Because of fight. The 5 o'clock you wake up and go to Balai. It's too far.
What time do you leave the house?
5 o'clock.
What time did you get to school?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock?
Yes.
So you are tired?
Yes.
When they born me, my parents said that we should not go there to school. That's why we are not going there.
So why are you not going to the next school?
My father told me that they were fighting, that I couldn't go to their school.
So I asked the fathers in Japido why they would punish their children by making them walk long distances when they can simply send them to Tadando. What is just 5 minutes walk?
Pesa yang kwaskunu dakru. Ewo nyumbo eni balai.
Balai eho wow.
Ewa nti Bunso Eco Park.
Nse ahawa omunante ko.
Muko onyumbo.
Eni balai.
Eni balai. Eni pandai.
Nse omubre. Be omubre ya anyefi.
Omubebre nti omubre no obi ekira wo se nane abuya wonso ojimino fa ojimino.
Very young children therefore do not attend school because of the long distance. The children stay at home until they are old enough to walk over 10 kilometers to enjoy the right to education.
No, say you're Tadando, Japido, Abobeko.
Say, Baby, I'm going to school. No, young person school in Ginaho. Ahana ya register sa school. One, no, musi. Omo, nimpadon chain. Say yes, sir. Na abenso ejet me say, nko mo be ye bribia omo fe population. Say omo say omo chere sa. Say population omo de yadi. Say omo don se chair.
One very interesting thing is that when a Japido man meets a Tadando woman and they fall in love and they eventually marry, the end product, the children, if they end up living here in Japido, all the children would have to go to Balai, that is several kilometers away, instead of just a 5 minutes walk to Tadando Primary School. It's very interesting. But after engaging them, the people are saying that they will only go to Tadando on one condition.
Ne aban ediba pataye na yenso ya ne agino nka odi JSS ba ha na omo ba siawe na omo asesi na ya ne ahu say JSS ebesi Japido a yebekọ ho.
So as it stands now, if the government delays building a school at Japido, the children would have to walk over 10 kilometers to access education. Jojo Kobna, JoyNews.
From education, let's talk access to water. And the Community Water and Sanitation Authority is calling for partnership and cooperation to create the desired change for sustained water resources in the country. According to the Central Regional Director of the CWSA, the current destruction of the country's rivers and water bodies calls for a concerted effort by stakeholders to ensure effective management of water. There's more in this report.
Commemoration of the 2023 World Water Day, organized by the Department of Water and Sanitation under the School of Physical Sciences at the University of Cape Coast. The Central Regional Director of the Community Water and Sanitation Authority, Isaac Kwesi Brown, urged the government to complete the Pualugu multipurpose dam to achieve the target of resolving the perennial floods caused by spillage from the Bagri Dam in Burkina Faso. He noted that sustaining a vibrant agro-industrial drive without proper and effective application of water would be zero, hence the need to effectively manage water bodies to save the environment and lives.
I do not think that the farmers in Burkina Faso are equally water and irrigation experts. What I believe is that the country must have developed a system to form partnerships to achieve common national goal. What is your water if it does not help us feed ourselves? Ladies and gentlemen, if we do not form partnerships and speedily get involved to create the desired change to sustain our water resources, the water we are watching on to its destruction will rather destroy us. If you want to understand this statement very well, I will ask you to visit Bolgatanga when it is announced that the Bagri Dam is opened. When you get to Pualugu, you appreciate the destruction of water, the destruction water can cause. The water that is producing fresh vegetables will be destroying houses, taking away cattle, sometimes taking away human beings. My heart desire, is to see the completion of the Pualugu multipurpose dam. I think it's a very important project that has to be embarked. Is the challenge only the lack of financial resources? Maybe yes, maybe no. Perhaps we need partnerships led by the universities.
The regional manager of the Ghana Water Company Limited, Seth Eric Atiapa, said activities of the illegal miners continue to deteriorate the quality of water for consumption. The activities, he pointed out, does not only increase the cost of treatment with chemicals, but it also destroys treatment mechanical equipment, which influence costs affecting what they call the affordability ratio. He therefore called on the stakeholders to come on board to tirelessly fight and halt the activities of Galamsey.
I can say that we have to continue to fight. We don't have to relent at all. We are struggling, frankly speaking, we are struggling. A few years ago, we saw that the water quality became better, but it looks like it is becoming worse again.
For his part, the CEO of Kwa Mixture, Professor Samuel Ato Duncan, reiterated the need for a concerted effort by stakeholders for accelerated change. He said it was time stakeholders embrace partnership and cooperation to enhance protection and conservation of water bodies for survival. Professor Duncan further suggested that there should be a multi-stakeholder approach to promoting sustainable water management practices, climate change adaptation, and disaster risk. Abdallah Osman's report read to you.
Staying on the subject of water, the Production and Water Quality Manager of the Upper West Regional Office of the Ghana Water Company Limited, Cletus Deyaku, is worried about the increasing level of pollution on the Black Volta, which he says is negatively impacting the operations of the Jambusu Wa plant. He says since the commissioning of the project in 2017, the river had constantly been polluted through illegal mining, illegal logging of trees, farming, and fishing activities. Rafiq Salam now reports from Jambusu.
As part of the celebration of World Water Day, selected students drawn from 4 second cycle institutions, namely St. Francis Xavier Minor Seminary, Wa Senior High, Wa Senior High Technical, and Wa Islamic Girls Senior High Schools, had a tour of the Jambusu water production plant in the Wawas district of the Upper West region. The aim of the tour is for the selected students to learn and acquaint themselves with the various production stages of the water from the Black Volta to Wa and its surrounding communities. The 3.3 million gallons water project was commissioned in 2017 at a cost of 55 million United States dollars. The students were accompanied on the tour by officials from the Water Resources Commission, Ghana Water Company Limited, and the Community Water and Sanitation Agency. Production and Water Quality Manager of the Ghana Water Company Limited, Cletus Zienku, expressed worry over the increasing level of pollution on the Black Volta.
2017 up to now, we did analysis. We have realized that the pollution level keep increasing. And that means that it's we, the people of Wa, and those along the river, our activities that is polluting the river. And we have realized that the activities that are most affecting the quality of the water in the river is the illegal mining activities, farming activities, fishing, and other activities that we may not be able to see. Logging is one. Once you clear the environment, now the land cover is removed. So when it rains, the water will run at a speed and therefore wash off the surface water, soil into the water, then increasing the turbidity of the water and also silting the river.
Just some few meters away, our camera captured these suspected illegal miners close to the Black Volta doing their act. Cletus Zienku noted that once the level of pollution of the water increases, chemicals used in treating the water are also increased, resulting in the high cost of production of water from the plant.
Now they say Ghana Water Company produce clean water, distribute it. That's our mandate. We produce, transmit water to the community at an affordable price. Now if we are polluting the water bodies, our cost of production is increasing. How are we going to make it affordable for the people? That means that the cost of production will be transferred into the community. A time will come, if we don't change our attitude, if we don't accelerate the change that we all want to see, the clean water we all want to have, if we don't institute something, change our behavior, our attitude towards the environment, towards the water bodies, a time will come that the water will not be affordable for all of us as we want it to be.
Basin head at the Black Volta Basin, Yoakamaiwa Abongba noted that as part of effort to the attainment of SDG 6, which targets water for all by 2030, implore all to advocate, among other things, protection and restoration of ecosystems, since it is the surest ways of safeguarding the existence of water for use today and for prosperity.
With regards to groundwater resources, the major challenge faced is the uncontrolled drilling of boreholes and the use of unlicensed drilling companies in drilling and construction of boreholes, and hence result in a situation where we have some boreholes not having or producing water for people. There is also unwillingness on the part of water users in the basin to register their operations with the Water Resources Commission, which is mandated by law to regulate and manage the country's water resources. Without a proper register for water users in the basin, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to regulate their activities to the effect that it leads to an unsustainable utilization of basin water resources.
Powers Regional Director of the Community Water and Sanitation Agency, Atukonsa, on his part, expressed concern about burden of loved ones at homes without any proper rising embankment on them.
Most importantly, if you take in our homes, a lot of people bury our loved ones indiscriminately, and we end up not putting any rising embankments on them. Years later, we misplaced the point and we drill boreholes there, and it is one of the major sources of contamination when it comes to the rural areas.
Reporting for JoyNews, Rafik Salam, Jamboso.
Well, from education and water resources, let's talk health now. And the Techiman Municipal Director of Health, Dr. Kusi Fosuhene, has bemoaned the accelerating costs of medical and surgical supplies on healthcare services across the municipality. This, according to him, is adversely affecting general healthcare delivery in the area, as the NHIA service providers are the most affected. Anasabit now reports.
Across the country, hospitals are facing serious challenges, particularly those providing NHIA services. Healthcare costs, which were already increasing before the COVID-19 pandemic, are now accelerating at an even faster pace, thereby affecting general healthcare delivery in the Techima municipality. Municipal Director of Health Services, Dr. Kusi Fosuhene, who was speaking at the 2023 Annual Health Review meeting, said this is adversely affecting all NHIA accredited facilities across the municipality.
Now, we all know what is happening in the country in terms of economics. And then the prices of drugs are skyrocketing by the day, due to inflation. So now it's a little difficult to keep pace with supply of drugs. So let's say what an NHI reimbursement could buy, say last year, you can't buy the same quantity of drugs, this year. So it's making it a little challenging for the facilities across board, private, public, and CHAG. And that is the feedback we as a health directorate we are getting from these facilities.
Dr. Fosuhene laments that there is the need for a national discussion on the need to cushion institutions that are into the importation of drugs to help address the rising cost of the commodity and in return save the various health facilities in the area.
I think what our advice is as a country probably is time we looked at it holistically and started some dialoguing on it. Can we give some amnesty to importers when it comes to consumables, drugs, as a way of mitigating the effects? It calls for, broader collaboration. Yeah.
Municipal Chief Executive for Techiman Benjamin Yaojako, on his part, admonished health professionals within the municipality to remain committed towards providing quality health care to the people.
I want to commend all of you for your commitment to duties within the year under review. We know of challenges that you are going through as health personnel. But in spite of these challenges and the advent of COVID, the monkeypox, the polio, the rabies, we all collectively came together and then pursue our responsibility as health personnel to arrest these cases. So I want to admonish that let's continue to commit to duties without any anticipation for immediate returns.
He was, however, quick to note that government remain committed towards providing the needed support to health facilities and health professionals across the area.
The government is aware of the situation and we are constantly working to improve on our service provision and our commitment to sustain the NHIs. What is left is for you to please do your part. Let us do our part. Having said this, the Municipal Assembly, as you are all aware, is also committed to collaborate with you and even improve on our collaboration. We continue to support you with logistics to enhance access to CHIPS facilities.
The meeting also provided an opportunity for participating stakeholders to provide valuable insights into their performances as well as factors affecting their services. Anna Sabit, JoyNews, Techiman.
Now, in our final story, United States Vice President Kamala Harris is in Africa for bilateral talks, and she's here with her husband, Doug Emhoff, who has been on another campaign to promote affirmative action. At a town hall meeting on Monday at the Labone Senior High School for the YOLO TV series, Mr. Emhoff said there was the need to empower women for a better future. There is more in this report put together by Jacqueline Ansomayabua.
The sequel of the series, Things We Do for Love, You Only Live Once, popularly known as YOLO, embarked on a town hall event to create awareness on youth-related issues such as adolescent reproductive health, teenage pregnancy, COVID-19, and many more. The guest of honor, Doug Emhoff, husband of Kamala Harris, expressed his profound gratitude to the YOLO production team for such an educational series and stated that he was thrilled to know that the show addresses issues affecting women and that his main priority during his visit is to help address such issues.
So thank you to the educators, the stars, the producers for shining a light on these issues, that are so important to young people who sometimes don't feel heard, and sometimes you don't feel like anyone is looking at you and can see you. But we do see you. And second, gentlemen, I've spoken out a lot about the importance of women in leadership roles and advancing women's rights. While I'm in Ghana and throughout my travels in Africa, I'm going to be focused on reaffirming the United States' commitment to advancing rights for women and young girls all around the world.
Popular Ghanaian actor Majid Michel stated that the historic visit by Mr. Emhoff goes a long way to impact the youth to make good choices.
These people have been in leadership for over 200-300 years compared to us. How old is Ghana? Ghana is in the 60s. Compared to them, we're still adolescents. Anyone representing America that comes to this soil, America is on this soil, which is a great impact leadership. These children listening to this man speak means a lot to us because we know the impact that his words will make on these students, and that is the focus. The focus is not America. The focus is the people of Ghana and the youth in particular. We are here to not motivate, we are here to instruct them to make the right choices, to do the right things, to take fear out of them, for them to take what is theirs.
Actress Jackie Appiah also revealed that the impact of Doug Emhoff's visit has a great impact on the movie industry in Ghana.
And I'm so happy that I'm part of history because this is the first time such a dignitary is taking part in anything that has to do with movie making or filmmaking in Ghana. Mr. Emhoff is currently on a 3-day visit to Ghana with Vice President Kamala Harris. Jacqueline Ansomayabwa's report for Joy News.
Thank you for staying with us for the news review. Shortly, we're joined by Bobby Banson, a lawyer. But this segment always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And they've been gracious enough to grant you gratis for free prostate and female fertility screening. So if you're a man, check out your prostate for free. If you're a woman, check out your fertility rate for free. Where can you locate Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic? Here in Accra, they are in Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, Kronumabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji Estate in Community 22 in Tema. Outside other areas, Techiman, Hanswa and Esiama Enzema, that's where you can locate them dotted across the country. You can call Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But thank you for staying for the start of the news review. Bobby Banson joins us. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning, Ben. Nice to see you again.
On pain of sounding a certain way, I have missed you.
Well, I've
left you stuttering.
I don't think the sound is any different from what it should be.
It should be.
Well,
in our parts, sometimes you say something innocent, innocuous, and people will take it all kinds of ways. So, but we thank God it's another day. Thank you for making the time to join us. Between the last time we interacted and now, a lot has happened. I always do this for most of you who join me. What is that one topical thing that you would like to maybe just give vent in about a minute on? I mean, in recent times, we've had the capitulation of the minority, if you like, in Parliament on the back of the Supreme Court judges, but mostly on the back of the nominees by the executive. And a lot has been going on. Any particular thing you'd like to speak about?
Well, I think that would be a major topic from Friday. Is it something that we were expecting? For once, on a number of times I've said on your platform that if the minority does not take advantage of the power, for lack of a better word, that the people of Ghana have given them by giving them almost equal numbers in Parliament, then they would have a big problem justifying why they should be given executive power in 2024. So far, apart from getting their own appointed as Speaker of Parliament, I don't see how they have used that power to further their cause of letting us know.
Yesterday, when I spoke to Murtala Mohammed, the Tamale Central MP, he said they had done it with the e-levy among other issues. Some of them skipped my mind, but he mentioned about 3 or 4 of them where, apart from the Speaker, they had actually followed through on the will of the people, so to speak. Would it be harsh then to judge them just based? Wouldn't it be harsh to judge them just based on what happened on Friday?
Well, we remember things like this because of the impact that it would have. The fact that it was communicated that they have agreed not to. In some instances, we have seen that instead of voting, they just decide to walk out.
Right.
Now I'm beginning to think that maybe if they didn't walk out and they had stayed, they knew what would have happened, and they just decided to walk out.
Right.
The numbers that we are looking at is not 1 or 2 persons that decided to break ranks.
Right.
It's quite a number of persons that decided to break ranks.
You're now talking of Friday.
Yes, on Friday. Friday. I just hope that they manage it well. I've heard, should I say, radicalists within the party trying to say, bring them out, expose them.
Fish them out. Yeah. Dr. Clement Park had some choice words for them. He said God would deal with them. I mean, paraphrasing, suggesting that. We heard Fifi Kwete, the secretary of the party, say, call them traitors.
I think that approach may backfire if they decide to do that, bring them out, expose them, and deal with them. Let's just oppose it with the MPP. When they had about 80 or so MPs saying that they are not interested in the budget to be read by the Minister for Finance, and they wanted him out. The MPP as a party, if they had gone very hard on these MPs, looking at their numbers, looking at what they stood for, the gravitas some of them have in the parties, their constituencies, they would have faced the problem. But for some reason, they've managed to douse that fire and then ensure that they've whipped them in line when it comes to government business in the House of Parliament. I think that the NDC should not go on that tangent with these people. They should rather take time to find out what their concerns are and address them. Because between now and 2024, there would be a lot of such incidents. And if those people, because you see, NDC cannot take them out of Parliament now. They've been voted by people. If they decide to leave Parliament, if they do not decide to leave Parliament voluntarily, NDC cannot kick them out. NDC cannot write to Speaker of Parliament to say that we are removing these people from Parliament to replace them. And so if you malign them or you isolate them from the party, what it means is that they will keep voting against the lines of the party, keep breaking ranks with the party, and you'll be empowering the majority. Now we have the CI from the Electoral Commission that is on the horizon. I want to see how they are going to handle that. Because with all the, for lack of a better word, noise that they make about rejecting some of these policies or some of these bills, and they end up being passed because some of your people decided to vote for him behind the scenes, then you ask yourself, okay, do they see your should I say de facto presidential candidate as somebody that would carry the authority of the party? Do they see your party chairman as somebody who carries the authority of the party? Because these are. So
you feel that undermines the leadership of the party. But just to clarify on this matter, initially John Mahama himself, the former president, had some choice words for these people. Later, he came and said that no, let's not victimize them. Let's not create a situation where they will be outcast. We will need them moving forward. Let's unite so that we can fight our common enemy. So that was the change in rhetoric. But from the general secretary of the party and some others, in fact, some MPs, now there are even lists going round of purportedly those who voted a certain way. And that could be problematic, right?
Yes, I think that could be, and I agree with the former president's second stand as you have narrated. I think that they should have some elders interrogate the issue, and then find out, instead of throwing words at them and rather maligning them. Because you see, it's better to keep the enemy closer than to keep them away, especially when there's somebody who is ready to use that as a weakness in your camp.
Well, interesting thoughts you've shared with us on that. We'll keep our eyes on that and see how things pan out. Daily Graphic newspaper, Kumasi ready for maiden graphic national development series, and the Daily Graphic pushing on that front. U.S. pushes for Ghana's debt reduction. And I heard also, I'll have to check that they've sent someone, there's an appointee to help us with some aspect of our economy. I'll just check that. I found that curious. I found that rather interesting. But they have been pushing, as far as the IMF is concerned as well, to help us with our debt situation. But the U.S. pushes for Ghana's debt reduction. There's explosion rocks Abuadze thermal plant and collaborate with MMDA's chiefs to halt quarry site encroachment. That is Mrekuduka to quarry operators. On the international front, Chad's interim president pardons 380 rebels and Hotel Rwanda hero freed from jail. That's a story I've been following keenly. On the back page, Osman Bukari saves day for Black Stars, and we drew 1-1, without which we would have been in dire waters, with the Central African Republic now in second with 7 points and our Angolan opponents with 5 points. But the visiting Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, has given an assurance that her country supports Ghana's engagement with the International Monetary Fund and will continue to push for bilateral creditors to provide meaningful debt reduction for Ghana. Quoting her, she says, "I recognize the challenges Ghanaians are facing, especially in the wake of a global pandemic and the disruptions caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine," she said, and noted that the U.S. welcomed Ghana's commitment to reform its economy to deliver sustainable and inclusive growth. Vice President Harris gave the assurance yesterday during a joint press conference with President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo at the Jubilee House in Accra. She also announced a $100 million support for Ghana, Benin, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo to help them address the threats of violent extremism and instability. I was also referencing that story about, a handpicked person supposedly to guide us through, this process of stabilizing our economy from the American end, and I found that rather interesting. I'll just find the story. But what's your take on this?
Well, whenever I see these statements or narratives from the seat of government, it reminds me on the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. Unfortunately, it seems to have been reversed. Of course, they will blame the Russian-Ukraine war. But within a space of 3 or so, 4 years, see how we now literally are going, begging for aid and assistance from these development partners, as we call them. And be that as it may, there's no free lunch everywhere in international politics. They will definitely come with their terms and their conditions. And I just hope that we would have the interest of Ghana at heart when we are negotiating some of these deals or engaging in some of these discussions. like you said, I also read that story about they having somebody come to assist us reform our economic structures. And I think that there's also somebody from the IMF that, for lack of a better word, has been seconded to the Bank of Ghana to also ensure that some of these structures are done just to meet the IMF conditions. At the end of the day, as long as it will take us out of the economic situation we find ourselves in, I think that in the interim, in the medium term, we have no choice. We are where we are. We must deal with it. And it's not only...
Some talk about our sovereignty and how all of these subtly undermine our sovereignty. But others have also said that where do you lie on that spectrum?
We are where we are at this stage. We cannot help. I mean, we have found ourselves. We can spend the next 5 years talking about how we got here, but it will not change the fact that we are here. And we need to find solutions from within the short to the interim term, and then plan for the long term so that we do not come back to this same position. And so I pray and I hope that the powers that be, those that are in charge of these negotiations and discussions, would make sure that they put in structure so that this does not become a cycle where every 10 years we have to go back, every 10 years we have to go back. Then we'll be speaking about the fact that we've lost our sovereignty. But as it stands now, there's no country that is not in debt. From the United States themselves, you read about they having to increase their borrowing ceilings, and all of that. And so it's how you manage it to make sure that it does not become a repetitive cycle that shows the different leader that you are. And so I'm just hoping that we will not find ourselves in this situation again. And the current discussions with all these development partners will ensure that we have the fundamentals right so that we do not repeat going back to them for this form of aid or assistance.
There's also explosion rocks Abuadze thermal plant. A huge explosion has ripped through one of the thermal plants of the Abuadze Power Enclave in the Shama district in the western region, leading to the loss of 50 megawatts of power to the national grid. However, the Volta River Authority has said there is no cause for alarm as there is enough generation to cover the shortfall from the blast. The Deputy Chief Executive of the VRA in charge of engineering and operation, Edward Obing Kenzo, has been saying the explosion, which occurred last Thursday, was of very high pressure, leading to the flying of heavy metallic objects. However, he said there was no fatality. At the time, there was limited human movement, he said. My concern here is that we've had a number of these explosions in our country, whether from filling stations. And I remember at a point on the Legon stretch where there was this filling station sited right where a church was also in operation, right in the same precincts. We've had those situations. We had the Apiate incident, mining related, and now these ones. And I begin to ask myself, yes, we all know that we don't have too good a maintenance culture in this country, but is it getting worse from where you sit?
I think, is it worse? I'm not sure. I don't have the statistics, but I think that now it's coming into the media light often. Except that, with some of these facilities, like the fuel stations, these thermal plants, they are supposed to be regular checks. I don't know whether it's under the municipal assembly or there's some government agency that is supposed to be checking some of these things. But some of them I won't call them, but there are accidents that will just happen that are not necessarily due to the negligence of an operator or someone. Those ones, definitely. Yes, you cannot have them. But the ones that investigations will show that they are due to the negligence of someone, those are the ones that people must be punished, people must pay for what they have done to serve as a deterrent. But we hardly hear that okay, there was an explosion on the Legon stretch, and the investigation showed that it was because somebody was negligent, and nothing happens. All these fires that happen in our marketplaces, we always hear reports saying that it was because of somebody using a gas somewhere or some wires, electrical wires being connected without covering, just like that, and we don't hear anything. I remember years ago, I think it was President Atamils that was in power also, that there was a huge market fire outbreak. Was it in KJTia? Also where they said they have brought some Israelis to do an investigation and come up with a report to stop some of these market fires. I don't know whether the reports were ever made public, whether the findings were ever implemented. And here we go again. These things keep happening. We don't thoroughly investigate to find the root source and also prevent them. And so now that the markets, they are almost open due to pressure from the market women that this is our livelihood. Let's go back. We don't care. We will take the risk. And it keeps happening and we don't do anything about it. That is where we get worried. Because if it happens once, twice, 3 times, due to the same causes, and nothing is done about it, then it shows that those that are in power that should actually prevent it are actually being negligent. And they are the ones that would have to be held responsible for some of these things.
Let's get into this final story from the Daily Graphic newspaper. I am all for affirmative action and equity. So let's do this. Meeting to promote gender equality in ECOWAS underway. And gender experts drawn from the ECOWAS region have converged on Accra for a 3-day meeting to discuss, review, and finalize the ECOWAS Gender Development Center Strategic Plan 2023 to 2027. The plan is to build on the progress made towards social justice, sustainable and economic development in the ECOWAS region through the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Kudos to those who are supporting this all-important event. The Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Kamala Harris's visit. U.S. pledges a $100 million package for Ghana and 4 others towards addressing violent extremism, instability in West Africa. 6 in a Shaiman soldier murder case remanded again. Ghana to collaborate with U.S. to find peaceful resolution to conflicts worldwide. That's according to the president. And highly rated, McCallan hosts exclusive experience in Accra. But let's focus on that story on page 3. And in fact, then I'll look at another story, the spate of road accidents. But the 6 accused who were arrested in connection with the killing of a soldier, a Moro sheriff in Ashaiman in the Greater Accra region, have once again been remanded into police custody. This was when they appeared before the Ashaiman Circuit Court yesterday during pre-trial proceedings, charged with stealing, robbery, and receiving of dishonest items. A lot of people don't know that if you accept or you purchase stolen items, you are also implicated. They are Safiano Musa alias Dayogo, Ibrahim Abdul Rakib, Samuel Tete alias Wiper, Abubakar Sadiq alias Birdman, the rapper comes to mind, and Yusuf Muhammad and Abdul Gafaru Abdul Karim. Tete and Sadiq, who have been charged with robbery and murder, had no counsel when they appeared before the court presided over by Mr. Simon Gaga. Just adding the story so you can respond to it. 9 died, 6 injured in gory accident at Brimso. And 9 persons died on the spot while 6 others suffered injuries in a gory motor accident at Brimso near Bunso in the eastern region stretch on the Accra-Kumasi Highway last Sunday dawn. The bodies have been deposited at the mortuary of the Kibi Government Hospital for identification and autopsy. You would recall that before that, there was an accident, I believe, with 8 people losing their lives. Not too long after that, this one happened. And there is this type of bus. I will not, I don't want to ruin anyone's business. But those buses, some people consider to be death traps because the way they speed, the way they are reckless, and in the last accident, 2 of them colliding. Some people feel we need stiffer regulations, especially for these ones that commute nationally. Your quick reactions to these 2 stories. When I said Birdman, I heard you laughing. You know Birdman the rapper, right?
Yes, Ben. I know Birdman the rapper. I also remember the one who is standing trial for the murder of the former member of Parliament, JB. It's interesting how they come up with these.
Oh, you mean Sexy Dondo? That's his alias.
Yeah, Sexy. So that was why I actually smiled how they come up with these names. But on the road accident issue, I always say that I don't know what else Ghanaians want the regulators to do. When you sit in that vehicle and the driver says, oh, in 3 hours, I'll move from Accra to Kumasi. And you are sitting there and the driver is speeding. And the passengers do not tell the driver to stop. I mean, what do you want the regulator to do?
But sometimes you tell the driver everything and he just does what he does. I guess the option is you've paid. You can choose to stop. I mean, alight, and you would have to find a way of getting to, let's say, Kumasi. Imagine getting stopped somewhere.
But then the truth is that if you go to the...
Or go ahead.
if you go to the, I mean, when we go to the new plant station, they have the category of buses. You know the ones that you know they speed, and that is why you go and sit in it.
The so-called express buses.
You know, before you go and take it, you know you want to sit in it because you think they will get there very fast. And so you have taken the risk. I'm not saying that I mean, there are speed limits on the road. We don't have a system where it is really enforced. We have police checks. The drivers stand at the corner, they use the speed guns. Some of them do not always work, some work. When they arrest you, the drivers find their way out of the police arrest and they continue. And we keep patronizing these vehicles. And so if we as the consumers do not insist that the people that offer these services to us do it the way that the law has asked to be done, and we are victimized by it, we cannot necessarily go to the lawmaker and ask the lawmaker or blame the lawmaker, because there are speed limits on the road. What else do you want them to do? If you sit in the vehicle and then the driver is over speeding, why don't the passengers come together? I don't know, Ben, when last you took those transport, but sometimes if you are telling the driver slow down.
Lawyer Banson, my life is only one. I don't play those games with my life. I don't go for those kinds of.
Yeah,
even if I'll do that, I have to be very. I don't want to mention any brands, but I have to be assured that at least it's a much bigger bus. I am seated somewhere that, I mean, even if there's an impact, I take a lot of precautionary measures in that regard.
You know, when I was in school and I used to go to Kumasi a lot. Whenever I go to the new plant station to take the bus, I used to circle around the bus to physically inspect the tires, the back, because sometimes you see they lift the engine side, the cover. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
those are red flags for me. But
look, there was a time I
remember, people, and I intentionally go around looking for the driver.
From way back, there was a time when I was going to board this bus, and something happened. So the driver was doing something. He came close to me and he was reeking of alcohol. I immediately changed my mind. Immediately, I changed my mind. Because this one, he's obviously drunk.
And your life is not worth that 200 CDs or 150 CDs you are paying. So it's sad. And you know, sometimes the drivers themselves are victims of these accidents. So who are you going to charge? How much will insurance pay to your family? And you know, some time ago, I had a student in my class who contacted me, having been involved in some of these things. Fortunately, he didn't die, but the psychological trauma alone, he had to stay out of class for some time. And you know, how much will insurance pay you to recover for the time you have lost, for the trauma you have been through, and all of that? So we just hope that education sometimes goes on. The driver unions also have a responsibility where they must have some means of educating their members, those who issue the driver's license. I think that we must have a system where you've been involved in one too many accidents. Your license should not be issued to you. But do we have records? Do we have data to check some of these things? So if the system does not provide for means of enforcing the laws, then it behoves on the passengers to make sure that they insist on the drivers, because some of these things are common sense, man. You just won't sit in the car when you see the driver going 100, 120, 140 to tell him that, listen, I think you should slow down, and rally the other passengers to ask him to slow down. If he doesn't, at the next police stop, hand him over to the police and get another vehicle, or call the drivers union for them to arrange. They may not sound practicable, but if you start insisting on some of these things, the drivers will sit up.
Let's wrap with these stories. We have some 2 minutes to go. I'll read two of them, and one I'll just share my thoughts on. That is the story in the graphic business. Investor Protection Fund, industry players optimistic. But there is this one. Bank of Ghana hikes policy rate to 29.5%. In fact, in recent times, it has hiked it by 150 basis points, bringing it to the 29.5%. Between December last year and February this year, the policy rate has gone up by over 1%. Now, what all of this means is that the cost of borrowing, whether as an individual or business, is going to get even higher. If you're on a facility, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The cost is strangulating, stifling. It's smothering around this time. It's crazy. I know exactly what I'm talking about. So I would have you reflect on that story. But two others that I want to quickly look at. In the Daily Guide, I'll restore financial discipline. That's according to President Mahama. A story on page 3. And he says his bid to become the NDC's presidential candidate for the 2024 election is a result of the country's financial situation and government's inability to run the affairs of the country. You remember he was saying he's been deliberating on whether he should take another swipe at this, and that is what he is saying now. In the Finder newspaper on page 2, soldier slaps policeman provoking violent scuffle. And a violent scuffle ensued between police and military personnel near the Accra Regional Police Command yesterday, creating fear and panic among the public. An eyewitness told the Finder that the scuffle was provoked by members of a military patrol team escorting a bullion van who slapped a police personnel not in uniform for not giving them way. Quick reactions?
Well, I want to speak on the ex-former president's campaign. It's become obvious that the economy would become a main issue for this election, more than anything else. My only worry is if the MPP manages to turn the economic situation around before the 2024 election, which has the potential of happening if they get this IMF deal, if they're able to put the structures right in the short to medium term, then what else would be the message that will come? Maybe corruption next, but it's interesting.
You read my mind.
You know how Dr. Akakpo, pardon?
You read my mind.
Yeah, you know how Dr. Akakpo say, has taken agriculture as his main theme, and you know how I think Alan Chamantin has also taken industrialization or something, the GTP, as his main theme. I'm looking forward to the NDC candidates, so far the flag bearership hopefuls, also coming up with their main, themes. I think, was it 2016 election going into it, the former president had what he called, I think 2012 also, what he called the 4 thematic areas that he was focusing on.
Right.
I'm looking forward to that kind of discourse, in our body politics, to see that we are now narrowing down to issues and not personalities.
Right.
And so I'm really looking forward to that. Instead of focusing on the failures of the existing government, I think that is leave that for the propagandists.
Right.
Let them do it. But I'm expecting the flag bearership hopefuls to tell us what they would do in the next 4 years, or if it would take 8 years, to turn not only turn the economic situation around, but address the fundamental issues that keeps letting Ghana not takes its place. Let me put it like that.
Okay.
I almost said to make Ghana great again, but then have we ever been great? So then we have to take steps forward. So it's between now and the elections. Of course, it will be very interesting how the debate will turn out, and we are looking forward to it.
Bobby, thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning.
Much,
we know how busy you are, so we greatly appreciate it when you make the time.
I can never say no to you. So they always tell me it's Ben, so you have to stay.
We wish you the best of the day, sir. Bobby Banson is a lawyer, and he speaks freely, of course, intelligently as well. He joined us for the news review. Just to wrap, the Daily Dispatch, an open letter from an NDC MP who voted for 2 NPP ministers to NDC supporters. And this one says, stop making your MPs zombies in Parliament, Ajimandria to the NDC. All those stories in the Daily Dispatch. Happy birthday to the CEO of Nordstrom Company Limited, Tema, and Jada Foods Company Limited, also in Tema, Sheikh Ahmed Kwabena Nkrumah. Age gracefully. That's the message. Sheikh, God bless you. Right before we get into sports, talk about the Palancas Negras, the Black Stars, among others, how our groups are going. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic helped us to bring you this news review. They're offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening as well. Locate them in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronomabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade, Anaji State Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa and Siama Enzima. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Up next, sports. Do stay.
Four points out of possible 6 for Chris Hilton, the man who has been tasked to oversee the technical affairs of the Black Stars. 2 games against Angola, a win at the Bayara Sports Stadium, a draw in Luanda. And this means that Ghana still marches on seeking to qualify to the next edition of the African Cup of Nations. Is this a perfect start to the man who served as a technical advisor to his predecessor, Otto Addo? I am Muftau Nabila Abdullah. This is AM Sports. I was speaking to former communications director of the Ghana Football Association, Ibrahim Sani Dara, a man who is close to the senior national team, Taufik Abdulkadir Seno, who is also very close to the Black Stars. He was in Luanda for that game against Angola yesterday. And also Nana Ajiman, a football coach, a usual pundit here with us anytime we have stuff to talk about when it comes to the senior national team and other national teams. But before I engage my guest, let's go to Luanda where the game happened. It ended 1-1. Let's hear from Chris Hilton, the man in charge of the Black Stars.
The strategy defensively was Angola have some very good technical players.
Angola tem uma boa defensiva,
especially in the attacking areas.
Especialmente na área do ataque.
Okay, so we knew that defensively that we would have to be good and we would have to be solid.
Nós sabíamos que defensivamente tínhamos que ser muito bons para poder contrapor Angola.
Yes, but because they're such a good, expansive technical team.
Porque eles têm time que tecnicamente é muito expansivo.
We wanted to use the spaces, utilize the spaces and attack fast.
E queríamos utilizar os espaços para atacar rápido.
I thought once Angola scored the penalty,
quando Angola marcou o penalti,
it gave us a lift. It gave us inspiration to get back into the game.
Nos deu inspiração para voltar ao jogo.
And it's normal that Angola dropped maybe a little bit deeper.
E foi normal que Angola baixou a sua defensiva.
But the game is 90 minutes.
Mas o jogo são 90 minutos.
And I think we proved we have a big spirit in the team.
E nós provamos que temos grande espírito no clube, no time.
And in both games, scoring late goals.
E nos 2 jogos marcar golos tardios.
Yeah. Angola are a very good side.
E Angola é bom oponente.
And we are very happy to have 4 points from the 2 games.
E nós estamos muito alegres por conseguir 4 pontos dos 2 jogos.
Mister, was it the outcome you wanted or you worked so hard for?
We wanted to win the game.
Nós queríamos ganhar o jogo.
You have to approach every game to win it.
E você tem que entrar a cada jogo para ganhar.
And sometimes you have a setback.
De vez em quando tu tens uma controvérsia.
And the penalty was for us disappointing.
The penalty for him was very disappointing. Let's go on Zoom and phone and speak to my guests, Taufik Abdulkadir Seno, Nana Ajiman, and Ibrahim Sani Dara, a former communications director of the Ghana Football Association. Let me start with Taufik. Taufik, you were there. Talk to me about what you saw in that game against Angola yesterday.
everybody who is listening and watching the show. It was a tough battle, as we all saw in the game yesterday. The Angolans, unlike what we saw at the Babayara Sports Stadium, were unable to come out in their numbers to support the team. But trust me, even the few people who came to the stadium to support the Palancas Negras of Angola really demonstrated good sportsmanship and also supported their team very well. The kind of uproar and applauses that they gave to the team were amazing. You could imagine if the stadium had been full and all these people were supporting the Angolan national team, that would have been very terrific. Regardless, I think that Ghana was resolute. We looked much more organized and open compared to what we saw at the Babayara Sports Stadium. Angola in yesterday's game also opened up to play because they needed the win, and that also enhanced the play of the Black Stars because it was an open play for both teams. One good thing about what happened yesterday was the pitch, to be honest with you. The Angolan pitch compared to that Babayara Sports Stadium looks better. And so clearly you could see that the players' movement, their ball control, their ball distribution and everything looks better than what we saw at the Babayara Sports Stadium. So yesterday it was a combination of a lot of factors that enhanced the play of the Black Stars. In the end, the Black Stars were able to run away with a point. In a game that some of us felt that getting to the dying embers, the Black Stars could have stolen the win if Joseph Stencil had shot directly into the net when he came face-to-face with the goalkeeper. Regardless, they say half a loaf is better than none. Black Stars are still on top of the group. And in June, we'll have to meet Madagascar and play Central African Republic in September to wrap up issues. But what happened in Angola yesterday was an incredible spectacle.
Tafik, talk to me. What influenced the decision of Chris Hughton to drop Thomas Partey?
Well, to be honest, a day before the game, we got to Angola a day before the game, early in the morning. So the day before the game, which was on Sunday, the mandatory training session, Thomas Partey did not train. He had a special session where the team medics and the physical trainer took him through a series of activities, but he did not join the entire team to train. An indication that something was wrong with him. Enquiries revealed that he had a knock in the game against Angola at the Babayara Sports Stadium, and the medical team advised that it is better he's rested in order not to aggravate that particular knock and turn it into an injury. So the coach, upon the advice of the medical team, decided to drop Thomas Partey and on the bench. Reason why we did not see the Arsenal star playing for the Black Stars against the Palancas Negras in Angola.
Okay, Tafik, please stay with me. Let me bring Nana Ajimani to the conversation. Nana, apologies for that. Talk to me about what you witnessed in this game in terms of the decisions of Chris Hughton.
Good morning, Muftau. Well, I told you last week, Friday, that the game was going to be a cracker, if you remember, because the game that Angola played in Kumasi, they had a game plan which was containment. They were going to be quite happy in securing a golden straw, even though they had some good attempts on goal, which they fluffed. They were very well organized. They got players behind the ball very, very quickly, and they were able to retrieve possession and then transit into swift attacks. In Luanda, a completely different game. They came out there to play ball, to win the game. They had their 12th man there as well, which was the supporters. And right from the beginning of the game, it was quite clear that they wanted to score goals. I think I would agree with Tofik. We were a bit more organized in the back than we were in Kumasi. But in Kumasi, even though we won that game, we were outplayed by them. They played the better football. And here in Luanda, too, they also played the much better football than we did. They were much more organized. Individually, they demonstrated good skill and talent on the ball in order to ensure they maintained possession. And I think it was a good display of football from them. And I think you have to bear in mind that Angola is more than 50 places behind Ghana in the FIFA World Ranking. But that display of football yesterday didn't demonstrate how far they were behind us. They played very well. I think on the issue of Partey, well, I understand that he had his own physiotherapist there. Arsenal sent someone there with him. And more than, it's the advice of our physiotherapist, than it was the advice of his physiotherapist that influenced them to say, well, perhaps you should take a rest. I didn't observe a knock, but I think that Chris Hughton was confident enough that they wouldn't lose the game without him. He didn't play too badly when he was in Kumasi. We've seen him play better and obviously play better with Arsenal. I don't think the knock that it's claimed that he has will prevent him from featuring this weekend when they take on my club, Leeds United. I think he'll be there. And you'll see him demonstrate his best as usual because he's a kingpin for Arsenal. So I don't think he'll miss that game at all. And I think that was the consideration, to be perfectly honest with you. We've seen it before, Michael Essien and other players before when we've been in positions like this, not playing, in favor of their domestic club. It's nothing new. It's nothing new.
But Nana, sometimes you need to also appreciate the fact that these clubs, they spend so much on their players in terms of their health. So if you notice that there's a possibility that you could aggravate someone's injury, you just need to consider, like you mentioned, Chris Hughton was confident he would not lose the game. And if he doesn't have Partey, the boys can still deliver. So risking it, maybe he just said, no, let's not risk him. We can do this without Thomas Partey. And in fact, giving other players an opportunity have shown us that without Thomas Partey, there's a possibility that the likes of Majid Ashumero can still deliver those killer passes Thomas Partey provides, though Thomas Partey is on a different level, isn't it?
Well, you mentioned Majid there. Who didn't know that? I think the only person who didn't know that was Otto Addo. And we saw Painstill's contribution to it. We saw Bakari's goal. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Chris Hughton hasn't determined his first 11 yet. He's still working on it. It's still work in progress. And I think the next couple of games, you may see a different lineup, to be honest with you, because it's not fixed in stone. It's not carved in stone. There are some players there that are poor, a few players there that are poor, and other players that he is now given the benefit of the doubt and looking at, like Majid Ashimera. And I mean, the players he's given the benefit of the doubt to were players that we were saying that should have been in the World Cup. And he was technical director at that time. But, it just didn't happen. So I do appreciate the Arsenal scenario, but let's say it as it is. I don't know of any knock or anything. The main consideration is Arsenal have a game at Leeds. Leeds can be tricky sometime, and Arsenal want the 3 points because they're in pole position to win the league. There is no way they want to end up without winning the EPL.
No, so, appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you very much. Let me bring Ibrahim Sani Dada into the conversation. Sani, you have known Chris Hughton for a very long time. What does he bring to the table? Considering what you've witnessed in the last two games.
Well, he brings a lot. First of all, experience. As you can see, his management of the team and his fortitude, his management of the team. plus his experience in managing top teams in the world, clearly showed in the way he managed the 2 matches. You would see that, first of all, he was not afraid to make changes that will either please or displease people. He was not afraid to take decisions that were difficult, and was not afraid to make necessary changes also in the team, as we've seen it. Previously, you'd perhaps see that we're a bit static, not giving much opportunity to those on the bench. We saw a lot of changes in those directions that I think bodes well for the future. He's also given a few opportunities to players, as I said, were on the bench. I'd love to see a situation where he goes deeper to look for more players that could augment the team and to make those currently in the team not feel too comfortable with their positions. I think that there are good enough Ghanaian players out there who can compete for positions in the team and give the current players a good run for their money to make the national team better. But Muftar, one thing that must be pointed out is that a lot of people thought or think that Angola should be mincemeat for the Black Stars. The Angola national team is made up of very, very good players, a lot of them playing with some of the top teams in Portugal. So we should give them that respect that at least they are participants in the 2006 World Cup. Therefore, they have this culture of football in the country. And as you can see, their local clubs also do well in continental competitions. So I think that the test was a good test for our team because the Angola national team is not, they are not a cheap team or they are not pushovers. We should give respect to them.
Tafik, let me speak to you on this one. During the unveiling of Chris Hughton, he made Ghanaians to understand that his style of football or his, let me say, his philosophy or criteria for calling up players to the national team is not static because he thinks that every situation would demand that a specific kind of personality is required to fit into that situation. Based on what you've witnessed against Angola at the Baba Yara Sports Stadium and also in Luanda, have you noticed anything about Chris Hughton in terms of how he wants the team to play? Hello, Tawfiq.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, please, I can.
Yes. Before I address your question, let me quickly react to a concern and add my raised. First of all, the Arsenal physiotherapists did not travel with the Black Stars to Angola. So let's just give respect to our medical team for advising the coach not to use the player. And again, between yesterday and the time that Arsenal will play Leeds United, it's about 5 days. So by then, it is possible the player can play because at that time he might have recovered from whatever situation it was. Now, coming to your question, Musau, if you look at how we played in Angola, obviously the coach thought that Angola will open up because in Kumasi they played a 4-2-3-1 system, which was very compact. They were very, tight, well organized at the back. Their strategy was not to concede against Ghana. We were lucky enough to have got high numbers of the game after we kept pushing incessantly. But then in Angola, the coach expected the Angolans to. So it is possible, it's one of the reasons why he decided to also use players who will be fluid, players who are ball playing to play against the Angolans. However, also not forget that going into that game, he had Andre Ayew in, Alexander Jeku injured, Dennis Odoi injured,
Mohamed Salisu, yeah.
So these injuries also forced the coach to tweak his system, even if he had a mindset and a strategy of going into the game against Angola with these players who were injured. But because of the absence, he had to come up with a different strategy to be able to contain Angola and play against them. So for me, I think that he was right. Football is not dynamic. Football is dynamic. So as far as it changes, your system, your strategy must also change in order to be able to accommodate your opponents and get to hit them on their wrong side because you are taking the 3 points.
Sani, Tawfiq just talked about something quite interesting about the dynamism when it comes to football. And you are a man that many have said that when it comes to some of these people and how they take their decisions, it's critical. We saw Majida Shumero, we saw Joseph Pencil, we saw Ed Monado. In fact, Ed Monado started the 2 games. And there were also opportunities for the likes of Kingsley Schindler, who made his debut for the team. Then there was Gideon Mensah, who many have always called on to start in the national colours. Considering the opportunities Chris Hughton has given to these players, does this tell us that this is a man who is open? And in fact, Nana Adjima made it. At this point, he doesn't even know he's starting 11. He's still looking around to build a team, making changes before he finally settles on his 11. Based on the 2 games played, 180 minutes of football, so many players had an opportunity to play in the contest. Based on what we saw in those 2 games, do you foresee Chris Hughton opening or widening his net to give more players opportunities into the national team?
I do foresee a situation where he will give more opportunities to more players because, first of all, him being in club management for a very long time, he knows that his squads were static per the season. But with the national team, your squad is not static. You can change your team just as and when you want, as you have a match. So that gives him the opportunity. And one would want to ask, why would he chop and change the squad? Because we have a lot of talented players out there. And without giving a lot of players the opportunity, one, the current players would feel comfortable that whether they play well or not, they have their positions. But if you add that surprise element of bringing in 1 or 2 players to challenge existing players, it makes these players know and feel that, look, if I drop my guard a little bit, there might be somebody out there who wants my position. And if that person gets the position, perhaps I'll not get that position back. So that keeps, the squad ticking. That keeps the players giving off their best. And I do believe that there are lots of Ghanaian players out there, perhaps 3,000 to 4,000 players abroad, those born in the country, those born outside the country, who are keen to play for the national team. And a lot of them are doing well. So if a coach is in position and doesn't give, a chance or an opportunity to those players who are on the fringes of the squad or who are just making their careers out there, making it well at the top level, you run the risk of making your squad stale. And given what we've seen in these 2 matches of him giving players who were previously on the fringes of the squad, I think that changes will happen. He made that brave call by saying, Andrea, you are the captain of the team, even though you play in one of the best leagues in the world. Let me give some other players an opportunity. That shows that, look, if Andrea Ayew is able to suffer this fate at the hands of the coach, he would be able to drop or chop anyone he wants at any time.
Nana, talk to me on this one. And in fact, you spoke about how, in your opinion, Angola outplayed Ghana in both matches. But as I asked Tawfiq earlier, we heard Chris Hughton tell us that it's not about how you play, but it's about the result. 2 games, he's gotten 4 points out of possible 6. Have you noticed that Chris Hughton is not a man who is coming to play flamboyant football, but a man who is more interested in the results?
Well, I mean, all coaches are interested in the results, Mustafa. All coaches, what their main interest is to ensure they get the result. They can play an absolute stinker, but so long as you get that 1-0 or the 2-0, that's what they care about. I think, you know, this is a man who he is result orientated. He only has about 21 months or so in the position anyway. He would like to maintain his position as the coach. But as I've said to you, right now it's work in progress, because clearly there are many of those players that we were all saying should have been called for the World Cup who weren't. And by virtue of them being called now, it may be true to say that he also supported that call as the technical director, and he may have given that indication to Coach Otuado at the time. But Coach Otuado is the one who's making the decision. So it didn't happen. Now he has made those decisions because he probably thinks that he can put out a team that is stronger than the one that Coach Otuado fielded during the World Cup. And I believe that's the case. So, as I've said to you before, this is work in progress. He doesn't know his first 11 yet. He has an idea, but he doesn't know his first 11 yet. But he will, over the next two games, be closer to the point where, yes, this is my first 11. And we'll see about the likes of Andre, because, yeah, it was a big decision, but Chris is also interested in form. And Andre has been at Nottingham Forest in the EPL for some time now. Even the coach there brings him on in the second half. So, you know, his form isn't as it was before. And let's just face it. I mean, there are many players there that they're in their 30s. And that's not to say I wish to retire anybody. No, I don't. But the fact of the matter is, form is a major criteria for selection. And whether he's captain or not, if I have someone who's playing in the biggest league in the world, but he's only getting 20 minutes a pot, then for me, if I call him, I would use him in a similar fashion. I would see him as an impact sub. And basically, we know the legs are going a bit and all that kind of stuff. Andre slows the game down a bit, where if you noted in the interview that Chris gave, he was talking about fast attacking. So his style of play, his pattern of play is different. The way he wants the team to drive forward is different. And that calls for different personnel if the current personnel can't meet up to the demands of the coach. Okay. It's not a big deal because it's about the dynamics that we all accept is there in international football.
Do you foresee that in the next international window, which is going to be in June, where Ghana will be coming against Central African Republic, do you foresee possible changes to this team?
Yes, of course, because we've said there are a couple of injuries. So Salisu should be back, for example, to stabilize the back. Jiku too, he picked up an injury, you know, and even though Jiku played in Kumasi, the back was shaky. It was shaky. We left it to Amati yesterday. He conceded a penalty. Many of us will not really agree with the decision, but still, nevertheless, the facts are he conceded a penalty. So there's going to be shake-up, and I think the shake-up is going to start from the back right the way up to the front. There's no reason to change Atiziga at the moment. Yeah, he's doing well. Only conceded one goal. So I think there will be shake-up because this is not the first 11.
Okay.
The 11 that played in Kumasi is not the first 11. The 11 that started in Angola, it's not the first 11.
Okay, Nana, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Sani, you have spoken at length about the Black Stars, but I just want to take your thoughts pretty quick. The Black Meteors will also be in action later today. They went away to Algeria. They got a point. What do you foresee Ibrahim Tanko and his charges doing later this afternoon?
I think they played really, really well. The opportunity of using U23 players during the international break has given us a very, very good advantage. And I expect them to beat the Algerians, even though the Algerians have a very, very good team. Most of the Algerian players played in the recent CHAN and went all the way to the final.
Yeah.
And with the talent we have, if we play most of these matches or the U23 African Cup of Nations during the international break, or we are capable or we are able to get these players during that international break, perhaps we might be able to go to the Olympics again and do well.
Thank you, Sani. I appreciate your time. I know your child is disturbing you over there. Tawfiq, you are in Kumasi for that game after flying in from Angola. No rest for you. Straight away to Kumasi to watch that game. What do you foresee Ibrahim Tanko doing later this afternoon?
Well, I foresee Ibrahim Tanko parading a very strong side that will eschew complacency. That is the only, update that can affect the performance of the Black Mafia. In the first game against Angola, clearly,
Algeria, yes.
Clearly, you could see that Ibrahim Tanko and his charges had a very good game plan that was able to contain the Angolans. Had it not been the penalty that Ghana conceded in the late minutes of the game, Ghana would have even, run away from Algeria with a win. So I foresee Ibrahim Tanko putting up a very good squad, making a few changes. Free Banier is likely to play because in the first leg he was serving a ban and couldn't play in that particular game. So he's likely to play. Salim Adams is also available for selection this afternoon. So I foresee a quite, a bit different squad from what he used in Algeria. And I expect them to be able to, beat the Algerians and qualify for the U23 African Cup of Nations.
Thank you very much, Tawfiq. Thank you very much, Ibrahim Sani Dara and Nana Ajuma, for your time with us here on the AM show. We appreciate your company. The show will continue right after this. You can head on to my joyonline.com and read some more sports stories. And also, if you are in Kumasi or around Kumasi, just find your way to the Baba Yara Sports Stadium and throw your weight behind the Black Meteors as they seek to qualify to the next edition of the African U23 Cup of Nations that will be staged in Morocco. We appreciate your company. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for staying with us on the AM show. And after sports, we get into some of those topical matters, big stories as we call them. The first, we're going to be contemplating what you see in the background, the policy rate, which has hit, by the way, 29.5%. The Bank of Ghana in recent times actually incrementally put that forward by 150 basis points. It's upped it by 150 basis points. What this means is credit is going to be harder to get. And if you get it, you're going to be paying anything upwards of 30% in terms of interest. How is this going to impact business? How is it going to impact individuals? And for those already on facilities, what are going to be the implications? These are crucial times. The Bank of Ghana has said that it has had to do this on the back of curbing the inflationary rate. But what are the other dynamics at play? Well, helping us get into that conversation, we have Professor Elikplim Agboya. He's a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, a very good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
I also see the president of GUTA in the background as well. Doc, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Great. Let me start with Professor Agboya on this matter. I mean, over the last, year or so, we have seen the dynamics as far as our currency is concerned, which has also had spin-off effects on inflation. In fact, some of the highest inflation we have seen in some 2 decades. But the Bank of Ghana, in attempting to tame inflation, has been hiking the policy rate. What has all of that meant from last year when this activity started till now? Have we made the sort of gains maybe that we would have expected, Prof?
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. Like you rightly pointed out, the BOG has been on a rate hiking cycle. So they've been increasing the policy rate since November 2021. And cumulatively, so far they've done a 16% increase. Okay, so that's very much unprecedented. There are many reasons why they have done this. Before the MPC meeting, I thought that they shouldn't increase the policy rate for a number of reasons. So number one, we have seen some decline in oil prices. Inflation had reduced, though marginally, so it reduced to 52.8%. So there's been some marginal decrease in inflation. Also, the size of the negative real interest rate had been declining. And what I mean by that is there is a difference between inflation and the policy rate, or interest rates in general and the policy rate. Okay, so the negative interest rates have been declining, and negative interest rates are not generally a good thing because it means that when people invest, inflation is more than the returns that they are receiving, and that is not very attractive for investors, which may mean that people begin to find options, for example, that they may want to invest abroad or invest in the dollar. So in a certain sense, the negative interest rate has been declining recently. Now, also the exchange rate pressure is not too bad. The currency hasn't depreciated as severely as we saw last year. And also, another important reason that I thought they should hold the interest rate was that we've seen some instability in global financial markets. So, for example, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, Signature Bank, and even Credit Suisse also has been taken over by UBS. So there's been some volatility in financial markets, and even domestically, we have some financial stability concerns. So due to the domestic debt exchange program, the balance sheets of banks are generally weaker. They are not as strong as they used to be. The capital adequacy ratio has declined, though it's above what we usually consider to be adequate, which is about 10%. Okay, currently it's at about 15%. So for a number of reasons, again, the final point that I would make is that Treasury bill rates have been coming down. And I thought that gave the central bank some flexibility to at least hold the policy rate and not increase it. Having read the MPC report, I understand why they increased the rates. So number one is that typically we have to follow the advanced market central banks. So before the MPC concluded its meeting, it had seen that the U.S. Federal Reserve increased their rate by 25 basis points, which puts pressure on the central bank to also increase. Because if we don't increase, then people will move their money from Ghana to the U.S., for example.
Right. So those are some of the reasons behind this. We'll get into some detail on that, but hold for me, Prof. Also hold for me, Dr. Joseph Obeng. Let me bring in Mark Bedu-Abuaje, who heads the Chamber of Commerce. Mark, a very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning to you, Ben, and good morning to your viewers as well.
Right. I know you're on a time leash, so I'm going to do this very quickly. This latest hike in the policy rate by the Bank of Ghana, now it has hit 29.5%, I mean, generally. And this is another 150 basis points that have been added on. Over the months, we've seen these measures by the Bank of Ghana. For you, the Chamber of Commerce, what will be the implication of this latest move?
Thank you very much, Ben. For me, this increment came as a surprise to us because we have seen some stability in the macroeconomic environment. The inflation is slowing down a bit. The foreign currency market is also stable. So the least for me that the central bank could have done was at least maintain it at the 28%. Simply put, any time the policy rate goes up, banks also respond positively by increasing their lending rate. At the moment, the average lending rate is between 35 to 40 based on your risk profile. So the increment therefore means that banks are also going to increase their lending rate. So can you imagine if you are borrowing at 40 to 45%, given the other difficult situations that businesses are going through? A lot of businesses are going to collapse. Those who have borrowed on a fixed interest rate will not have much of a problem. So if you have borrowed on a variable interest rate, it means that you are going to pay an additional interest on the money that you have taken.
In other words, people with facilities already are going to have to pay more on the same facility, on the same amount.
Yes. So if your interest rate, your agreement with the bank is not fixed, you are going to pay more interest, given the fact that the deposit rate has gone up, and banks are also going to increase their lending rate. But if you have on a fixed interest rate, at least you'll be paying what you have paid over a given period of time. The other issue also has to do with the banks. At the moment, the banks are struggling based on the DDEP. The banks are looking for opportunity to also generate interest income. Private sector will not be able to borrow because the interest rate is very high, and the banks are also not going to get the interest income. So the thing that we are saying that banks are going to struggle, we are also making it difficult for the businesses and also for the banks. Together with the increase in taxes, the new taxes that are introducing, I'm afraid that its negative impact on the private sector is going to be there. We have said that businesses are suffering, businesses are collapsing. So I think that it was highly insensitive for the central bank to increase the policy rate again, which will also translate into increase in the lending rate for businesses.
Now, did you mention that borrowing, the interest was around 40 to 45%? Because I know that by and large it's above 30%, but 40 to 45%, is that what you said?
Excuse me, I didn't hear what you said.
So the lending rate or the interest rate, so to speak, did you mention 40 to 44%?
No, at the moment, on average, it's 40 to 35 to 40.
Okay.
And definitely once there is an increase in lending rate, the bank will also respond, as I said earlier. And the likelihood that the lending rate will go up between 40 to 45% is very obvious. And businesses are going to suffer. So in the future, I just start for the business community in Ghana. I hope that very soon something will be done to bring some relief.
Something like what? Something like what?
Something like bringing the policy rate down. Something like all the nuisance taxes that the government intends to add up to the taxes that we have will be withdrawn. We have made that submission that this is not the time for government to introduce new taxes or increase the rate of existing taxes. So we have to listen to the concerns of businesses so that the right environment is created. Businesses need this environment. If the environment is conducive, they will produce, they will make their profits, and then they will pay the tax that businesses are supposed to pay. If you continuously increase the policy rate, in fact, the monetary policy and the fiscal policy is supposed to strengthen a microeconomic environment. That is the private sector and the productive sector. In Ghana, we seem to be using this policy to cripple the activities of the productive sector, and it's not good. If you kill the businesses, nobody will employ, and you may not also get your taxes. So let's look at how we can use macro policies to strengthen or complement the activities of the micro policy. That is the businesses and the productive sector.
Mark, so I do know that the banks follow the regulations, the guidance of the central bank, that is the Bank of Ghana. But do the banks automatically reduce their interest rates based on policy rate reductions, so that if someone, a business person or some ordinary citizen had a loan or a facility, they would immediately feel the impact in a given month?
No, are you saying the banks reduce
when I'm saying when the policy rate is reduced,
yes,
will it directly impact the interest rates that the banks put on their loans?
Well, to some extent, we have a very rigid banking sector where they respond positively to an increase in policy rate. But when it comes to reducing it, they are a bit reluctant to reduce it to the extent of the reduction in the policy rate. And that has been established. But at least it will translate, give some relief, to translate into a lower lending rate, because the lending rates are coming down. The lending rate actually is the basis for which the banks will set up their base rate and add a risk profile. So if the lending rate is coming down, most banks will respond by also reducing if the policy rate is coming down, also reducing their lending rate. But if it goes up, the banks will also increase their lending rate as well. But the rate of reduction is not always as the rate of increment when there's an increase in the policy rate.
Well, so that would be a tricky situation, especially for those who have already been on facilities, and I know exactly what I'm talking about, who have seen increments in the payments that they have to make month on month. In some cases, people are paying so much more on the same amount. You get it. And that is pretty problematic. But there are those new bills before Parliament as well, growth and sustainability bill or the levy. There's also the excise duty, among others. How do you react to those? We've not had a conversation on that with you, so I just want to find out. How do you react to them? Will they only go to further exacerbate, compound your problems?
The line is changed. I guess you're talking about the new levies, right?
Yes. Will they further compound your problems?
It would definitely compound the problem. Definitely. If you look at the growth and sustainability levy, which is 5%, now they have roped in other businesses that previously were not paying the national fiscal stabilization levy. These levies are supposed to be temporary. From 2021, we have turned this levy into permanent. And it's before your tax, which means that it becomes an expense to you. So your expenses will increase and your profits will go down. And then after that, they will tax you your corporate tax. No business will be able to make enough profit to reserve as retained earning and reinvest in their businesses. If you take the excise duty, the food duty, they were not paying. Now you said you have to pay 20%. The water they were paying 17.5. Now they have to pay 20. This becomes direct cost to businesses. So coupled with that, I said the challenges that businesses are going through, it means that the cost of production will go up and businesses will not be competitive. You have opened your market under the AFTA and you expect that your businesses will be competitive. Now their cost of production is going up and prices will also go up. The difficulty is that it's not easy increasing prices as people think that when there's an increment, they will increase prices because some of them are putting to a level where they cannot increase prices. They will be forced to absorb this cost and eventually most of them will not be able to contain it and they may collapse.
My final bit to you, Mark, since you have to take leave of us, and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I just had to round it up with Mark or round it off with him so that I would be able to let him go. You consider all of these factors, but in there, mention is made of the fact that we need to go through all of these steps to get to the point of securing an IMF deal. How do you feel about the punishment, so to speak, that we have to go through just in order to secure an IMF deal? Are there other ways of doing this beyond what the Bank of Ghana and the executive arm of government is doing?
Well, the IMF deal did not ask us to increase taxes. The IMF deal asked us to increase revenue. And there are other...
It borders on sustainability.
Yes, increasing revenue. In fact, if we are able to improve our tax efficiency and digitize our tax collection system, we'll be able to make more revenue than increasing the tax rate and introducing new ones. The tax system is such that when you increase it to a certain level, the revenue that you expect you won't get. Because people will find a way to avoid the taxes. So I was expecting that at least they keep the old taxes and also ensure that they improve on the efficiency of collection. Businesses are not against taxes. Businesses want to pay tax. But if you make it too difficult for them and introduce some of these nuisance taxes, in the end you will kill them and not be able to get your revenue. So for me, I don't think that is the best approach. We've also made mention of government cutting its costs. I think that we should go to the drawing board and look at that one and look at where the costs can be cut and how we can also increase tax revenue. If you look at the e-levy, it's a great lesson to us. we made mention that it was going to affect businesses, and the likelihood of avoidance is there. They didn't listen. This one, I think they should withdraw the tax and also come back to the table for us to discuss. In fact, we've not had any discussion on that. We only saw it in the budget, and now they are seeking to get approval for its implementation. In the end, those who are going to pay, they should be able to engage them, the business community, so that we let them know the impact of this on our businesses and how it's going to affect the economy going forward. That's what we expect from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for joining the conversation. Mark Bedu Abwaje, CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. Before I go to Dr. Joseph Obeng, who is president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, as we call them, just to break down. So the road tolls are returning. They are making a return. And in some cases, I mean, averagely, we're looking at about 80+% in terms of the increments. In some cases, it will be up by over 100%. Looking at the surrounding issues, up to about 400%, looking at other factors. So road tolls are coming back. The e-levy is still on board. We have the likes of the COVID-19 levy, which some people have said is no longer relevant. It's one of those that had sunset clauses, or in fact, should the promise was that it would not, be here forever, it still is with us. The Get Fund levy, the only reason I mention this is that over the years, as has been pointed out, a chunk of it doesn't go to the Get Fund to support education. In fact, this year, below 40%, I think between 36 or 39% is going to the Get Fund. What happens to the rest of the funds? We're paying all of these. Add that to the fact that these three bills are going to come on board, new taxes, new levies, and we still have inflation very high. The Ghana Union of Traders Association came out with a release just yesterday and titled is Stop These Obnoxious Taxes. Businesses are already overburdened with high taxes and interest rate. That was just why I was premising my question to Dr. Obeng on this. How exactly is all of this now with the monetary policy rate that has been hiked, how is it going to impact your business? Let's be very candid with what this means for your business community. Dr. Obeng.
We are simply overburdened with cost of doing business. We can't take it any longer. It's becoming unbearable. Since 2021, we've been made to pay extra taxes. And because at that time we are coming from COVID and all that, we all understood and we've come this far. But we are not even doing badly as a nation because we were able to even exceed our tax target, our revenue target, 2022. Even for the past couple of years, we have been exceeding. So businesses are doing their bit to help. But at what point can we stress this? We are being overstretched with these taxes. And now with this introduction of these obnoxious taxes is going to be the last straw that is going to break us. Because then we are going to pay multiplicity of taxes. If you think about the growth and sustainability levy or tax, what it means is that all these businesses that are going to pay the 5% of their gross profits are going to offload all this on us. Shipping lines, when you give them the opportunity, they will just pass it on. They will even double it and pass it on to the end user of their service. And this is what we are talking about. That at this time, that we want to ensure growth in businesses. At this time that we are even having a semblance of stability in the forest and all that. This is not the time to bring these things to compound our problems, to even stop the growth that we are all seeking for businesses. Government want to enhance on local productivity. How do you produce? You cannot overprice productivity. It doesn't make sense. That's why we have to do everything to prune down the cost of doing business, including cost of borrowing, which is also going up by the fact that the monetary policy rate keep going up. It would keep going up, and then inflation is not being solved, because that's not the panacea, that's not the methodology to use. Because there's inflation because there's accumulation of cost of doing business. That's why it has affected prices negatively to that extent. It's not as a result of demand or the excess liquidity of cash or otherwise that you say that you are mopping up the excess liquidity. So you see that our policies are not helping us, and businesses are actually reeling under the distance. The COVID effect did not come and spoil businesses only. It came to, as a matter of fact, destroy most of our businesses. And that government is not only the victim. And if we are the victims, that's the reason why government cannot, government says that they are not getting its bit of revenue, because businesses are collapsing under the effects of the COVID and the Ukraine war. So why can't government sympathize with these businesses that are dying? Now we are very irrelevant in the scheme of affairs of the continental free trade area, because our cost of doing business is far higher than our other member nations.
So you're saying that we have the secretariat here, but we can't do much. Our business community is not benefiting from the arrangement.
We are just irrelevant, because if the cost of doing business is so high, you are in competition. You are borrowing over 40%. How can you produce and then break even and even be competitive with your counterpart elsewhere in the globe? So it means that you are just crippling businesses, and that's what we are talking about. That whenever we talk about excessive taxation, but unfortunately, I know that this government is very much aware that excessive taxation does not help businesses. That's why in 2017, government in its own wisdom said that no, businesses are dying, and that because of the effects of the what they call nuisance taxes. And then they try to remove most of these nuisance taxes for us. Now, these nuisance taxes are creeping back in force and in other forms.
What are some of those? What are some of those nuisance taxes?
If we have COVID have come and it's punishing as businesses are dying, and then you tax us out of something that is punishing us. It's nuisance, complete nuisance. If you have this special import tax levy of 2% that was passed even by the previous government, that we said that after the sunset we will remove it, and it has been there in perpetuity. Who is going to believe you when you say that growth and sustainability levy is going to go up to 2025? Nobody.
Has the increment in VAT been a nuisance as well?
Yes, sir?
Has the increment in VAT been a nuisance as well?
Yeah, to the extent, the rates at which we are paying now, then there's a kind of nuisance. If the rate that you are paying is manageable, and then if it is embedded in it, the 6% that cannot be claimed back, then the 6% is a nuisance on businesses. I hope you understand. And this is what businesses have been complaining. And that if we are not able to sit down, dissect the issues and evaluate and put it in proper economic form. Because in economics, whatever thing that you put on the table, you look at the pros and cons, the effects. Then if you are not thinking about the effect on the generality of your business community, where business, which is the engine of growth, then what kind of economics are you doing? Now businesses are suffering. We cannot go any further in terms of these taxes that we are paying. This, I'm calling it obnoxious, because they are going to hand all these taxes to us. And if you are taking it from insurance, we'll be taking some from banking, we'll be taking some from the shipping lines, the communications center service industries are all going to put this 5% on us.
Okay, so I want to move on.
How is the business going to survive?
I'd like to move on to Prof, but just to conclude with you on this specific point, Dr. Obeng. So basically, you've hit breaking point. Just confirm for me. This is breaking point for you.
Yes. We
All
cannot take it any longer. It's too much. Cost of doing business already, we are very uncompetitive in the sub-region. Ask yourself, why do Ghanaians go to Togo here, to buy their goods rather than buying from within?
All right.
How are the other neighboring countries not coming to buy from Ghana, from our manufacturing companies, and even from the imported goods that we also bring? Because the cost of doing business here is so high. And now we are going to compound the problem. And with Bank of Ghana, we are even surprised that the methodology that they are using to cap on inflation is rather the one that is worsening inflation. And it's not helping businesses.
I'll come back to you on that last point you made, but let me bring in Prof. Agboyo. Prof, now having listened to those in the business community, from the Chamber of Commerce, Magbedu Abuaje, you've just heard from Guta as well, Dr. Obeng, what picture does this paint? Is the Bank of Ghana, and by extension the executive arm of government, are they getting things right in terms of these measures being implemented? And what are the alternatives that we could be implementing? You just heard Dr. Obeng say that in trying to resolve the problem, we're only compounding the problem. What's your take?
Okay, so, well, I can understand why. So first of all, there's a separation between, let me say, the government and the Bank of Ghana, because the Bank of Ghana is supposed to be independent from the government.
I like how you said supposed to. There's a specific reason I in a way lumped them together. But yes, let's stick to the fine line.
Yeah, so they are supposed to be independent, and it is refreshing to know that the Bank of Ghana will sign an MOU with the Ministry of Finance to commit to zero financing of the deficits. So I think that will be helpful going forward. Now, what the Bank of Ghana has done, I see reasons why they have done that. Like I explained previously, I didn't think they should increase the policy rate before the meeting. I think Mark made the same points as well, very similar points to what I had made. But like I said, the US Central Bank has increased their interest rates. So more or less we have to follow. Number two, there's pressure. So it's an elephant in the room that to secure an IMF deal, we are most likely being encouraged to keep tightening. Okay, so there's probably some pressure from the IMF and the World Bank for us to keep increasing the policy rates. The next point is that there's still a wide negative interest rate. So as of December 2022, the negative interest rate was minus 27.1%, meaning that inflation was about 27% above, let me say, the monetary policy rate. So that's not good, because that discourages savings, that discourages investments in the economy. So it was very high by December 2022, 27.1% negative. Currently, the negative interest rate is 23.3%. What I mean by that is that inflation is 23.3% higher than the monetary policy rate. So if you are investing in, and it's even worse if you look at treasury bill rates. If you are earning 18% on, let's say, T-bills, and inflation is 52.8%, you are losing a lot of money in real terms. So they still want to reduce the negative interest rate to encourage investment in the economy. A point that came up in your discussion with Mark is that there's some perception that even if the BOG reduce the interest rates or the monetary policy rate, banks do not respond.
And that is a chief concern, because now a lot of people in the business community and outside of it are saying, look, it's like fuel prices in the past. Now at least there is some response. But when the policy rate changes, the banks do not necessarily switch, which means that once it goes up, you're going to be very highly affected, and the possibility of coming down so you get some relief is practically out of the picture. That's the problem.
Well, the banks are happy to increase when the Bank of Ghana increases its rates, but when the rate comes down, they don't adjust that much. So that perception is there. Probably that's one of the reasons informing the BOG not to at least reduce the policy rates. There's another reason that I saw from reading the reports, that the MPC report, the press release. There's a significant increase in money supply in the system, especially M2. So the Bank of Ghana is attempting to mop up this excess liquidity. If you read the reports, apart from increasing the policy rate, they also increased the cash reserve ratio from 12% to 14%. So there's a deliberate attempt to mop up excess liquidity from the market. And yes, hopefully, okay, one last point before I go to the staff level agreement. They are also increasing the policy rate. So the sense I get is that they are probably going to continue to increase, and they want. So as a doctor, what do you do?
How soon do you think there will be another increment in the policy rate?
So my sense is that they want to do it very quickly. They want to bring inflation down very quickly by the end of the year to about 25%, and by 2024 to back to their target, about 10%. So rather than doing it slowly, I sense that they want to do it very quickly to reduce their pain. So it's like a patient who is sick. Do you administer a very strong drug for them to recover very quickly, or do you give small amounts that will prolong recovery? So what I see they're trying to do is to do it very quickly, administer the dosage that they think needs to be given to the patient, in this case, the economy, so that we recover very quickly by 2024. And we're able to bring down inflation back to single digit to about 10%.
Is that practical? Is that the approach you would have used? Quick, short term, but what would be the impact on the business community? Or less pain progressively? Which approach would you have used?
Well, it's a dilemma, and I think that, and it's not an easy choice, okay, but I think that given that all that is taking place, maybe they have a strong justification for trying to bring this down quickly. You know, inflation is also a problem for businesses, and if inflation stays high, prices of goods and services will continue to be high. Inflation is something that can even lead to a coup if prices continue to increase. So I believe that bringing down the pain quickly would help.
Well, looking at what the consequences of inflation could lead to, of course, we've seen the example with Sri Lanka. No one prays that any such thing happens. But I think Prof is only making mention of the fact that when people become too tight economically, they may adopt drastic measures that nobody wants. Nobody wants that. You were going to make a final point.
Yeah, so the quick approach, they are looking at a number of things as well. If you look at economic growth, it's not severely compromised. We are not in a recession, so they have some flexibility to increase the policy rate. Again, if you look at financial stability, which was a key concern for me, I hadn't seen the numbers before the MPC press release, but capital adequacy ratio has dropped, but it's still good. It's about 15% now. Usually we look at 10% as a benchmark. So 15%, it means that the banks, even though they are suffering from the domestic exchange program, the banks are fairly strong. And therefore, financial stability is not a key concern for the BOG at the moment.
Let me go back to Dr. Joseph Obeng. You made a few things that I'd love to run by you. Hold for me, Prof. So sure. You made mention of the fact that the Bank of Ghana's, the very final point you made, the Bank of Ghana's measures to tackle or tame inflation are rather getting it or making it spiral out of control. How exactly do you mean? Is that what you meant, by the way? I'm just paraphrasing. And how do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's very surprising the way these people think. And we are talking about inflation, and that's the cost of goods and services. And so if cost of borrowing is very high, so are they saying that when the farmer go and borrow at a higher cost, it's going to reduce inflation? When the manufacturer go and borrow at a higher cost, is not going to add to the cost again? Is that what the economists are saying, or the Bank of Ghana is saying? And they've increased the monetary policy rate to cap inflation. And they've done it about 8 times. And whenever time they've increased the monetary policy rate to trigger the lending rate, it has also triggered upwards the inflation. So what solution did we have for them to adopt the same methodology? I'm saying that the inflation that we are having is not as a result of demand or otherwise. It's as a result of cost. It's a cost-pushed inflation, and they should get it. Because the accumulation, of course, the taxes that we pay, the duties that have gone up, the farming implements that have gone up, the chemicals that farmers use have gone up, and all that have affected the farming product in the food basket. And then the imported items also, because of costs having gone up in terms of taxes and duties and all that we pay, have also made these prices gone up. And that's what have pushed the inflation that we're talking about. So if you increase the monetary policy loan to trigger lending rates, it means that we are going to also see upward trend of the inflation rather than reducing it. Because they've done it in the past and it never succeeded in reducing the inflation. And so let my brother, the professor, tell us why you think that this time around it will be able. But this time around, when we have advantage that we are having some stability in the exchange rate, and then the monetary policy rate come down, reduces the interest rate, commercial lending rate, then of course we are seeing some positive trend that would have see a reduction of prices of goods and services. And this is not to be. We are not taking advantage of the seeming stability that we are having in the exchange rate, and we are going to compound the problem. How are we going to be competitive in whatever thing that we do?
Interesting point you make. Just hold for me. I'll come right back to you, Prof. And that was a question he threw to you. I mean, look at it. The components that a farmer, for example, will use, from fertilizer to labor to equipment to diesel, everything has shot up in terms of price. Now, if the farmer wants to go for a loan, it's going to come, that person is going to have to basically... I hear someone speaking. Prof, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so that person is going to have to pay through the nose, basically, to secure that loan. When you add all of these factors, how is that possibly going to impact, inflation? Because the farmer, for example, will have to add all of these to his products when he goes to market, and that's only going to compound inflation. So explain to all of us, I'm sure the lay people would want to know how this supposedly is going to help curb inflation.
Okay, so yes, I've heard this argument a number of times, and to a certain extent, it has some validity, because in our economy as well, the interest rate channel may not work as much as in other economies, because in other economies, there's a lot of credit. So when interest rates are increased, it's able to constrain demand. In our part of the world, not very much. However, I think that the increase in the policy rate, especially in the recent few months, hasn't worked for another reason. And that reason has been the financing of the deficit. So on the one side, the Bank of Ghana is increasing the policy rate, and on the other side, they are providing money to the government. So that's more of contradictory. So in my view, that is why the increase in the policy hasn't worked recently. But it's the same dosage of medicine that has been applied by central banks globally. And
is that to say, quickly, Prof, is that to say that our system does not necessarily, while generally that may be a mode of dealing with inflation, because of the system we have, it may not necessarily be the best way to go? Is that what you're saying?
It may not necessarily be as effective as it is elsewhere. But to a certain extent, it still works. Before we had this current crisis, if you look at, I don't have the graph here, if you look at the relationship between the policy rate and inflation, you see that they trend together. So there's a certain correlation between the inflation rate and the policy rate, meaning that to a certain extent, monetary policy is effective. It may not be as effective as it would have been if our economy was more formalized compared to developed countries. But I think that the policy rate still works. It's still a channel that is useful in addressing inflation. One of the ways in which it does that is that, at least from the perspective of capital flows, Okay, if interest rates go up, then there's a motivation for people to keep their money in cedis rather than changing it to dollars, both for domestic and external investors. For external investors, if interest rates in the US are going up, then they may take their money out of the country to the US, for example. And that's one of the biggest reasons why our currency depreciated last year. We had what we call portfolio reversals, where investors who had invested in our bond markets, they sold their bonds, changed their money to dollars, and went out. That was a lot of exchange market pressure. So in this sense, the policy rates can be useful in the sense that it encourages people to keep their money in cedis. It provides some incentives for investment in the economy as well.
Thanks for that explanation. Let me come back to you, Dr. Obeng. So on the back of what has been said, I'm curious though. You spoke about the interest rate and all the other dynamics, but for those members of your group who have gone for loans, what is loan repayment like in these times? And now that the policy rate has been hiked, what can you expect? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so our problem is the same and even worse. Because you see, when there's inflation like what we are experiencing, what it means is that the purchasing power of the consuming public is also affected negatively. It means, therefore, that they are unable to buy more goods, and the businesses thrive on turnover. So if they are not able to buy the way they should have, it means that we are unable to service our loans and our suppliers' credit. And so it compounds the problem.
Hello, Doc. Let me try one last time to see whether we have Dr. Joseph Obeng back with us. He is president of GUTA. Doc, can you hear me? All right. Doc's connection is frozen. I'll direct this next question to you, Prof. Mention has been made of the fact that on the back of the latest increment in the policy rate, it would hike interest rates up to the band between 40 and 45%. Already, it's hovering around 30, 35 and 40%. Now, it would hike it up by another 5 percentage points, so to speak. How bad is this comparatively, putting this side by side with what is happening in the sub-region, for example, in terms of competition, and our inflation is where it is? Halving it is not going to be easy. Bringing it to the 25% range is not going to be easy. Put that side by side with the fact that the interest rate is going to be around 40 to 45%. Comparatively, what would this mean? Right, we'll try to get our guests back on the line, but this is the conversation we're having this morning. It has to do with the Bank of Ghana increasing its policy rate by another 150 basis points. This is about the 8th or 9th time this has happened, bringing the overall figure to 29.5%. But the question is, how is business going to deal with it? Big business, small business, SMEs, for example. GUTA talks about those. How are they going to be able to weather the storm and sail through these choppy waters, basically? We've been talking about inflation. We've seen where it has been over 50% in recent times, even as it has plateaued. Then we have also had to do with the currency. And at a point sometime last month, our currency lost value of about 20+% within a short period. The fluctuations are still there. Now, there are those levies, taxes that we're hoping to bring to bear. 3 of them that we are putting before Parliament. And all of this, when you add that increment in the policy rate, it can only mean one thing. There's going to be a lot in terms of scaling the hurdle of doing business in Ghana. So that is what we're discussing this morning. We'll try to get our guests back on the line. Initially, we spoke to Mark Bedu Abwaje, who is CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. He shared his thoughts with us and made it clear that this was only going to compound the problems of the business community. He did not mince words. We also have on the line Dr. Joseph Obeng, who actually is president of GUTA, and Professor Agboya, who is a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Well, we have connectivity issues, so I guess we'll just have to draw the curtains here. It would have been good to get their last comments on some of these dynamics, but interesting points that have been made. I wish, though, Dr. Joseph Obeng could have shared his final thoughts on the loan repayment bit, but technology will not allow us to do that. We're grateful to them for having joined us for this all-important conversation. But before we get into our next conversation, which interestingly also borders on financing our system, our economy, and sustainability, that is in politics or on the political front, let's just remember that water is life. Need I remind you, just before I get into this, it's been noted that a lot of us nowadays are not drinking sufficient bits of water. You know what that could do to your kidneys, what it could do to your system generally, knowing that about 70% of our bodies consist of water. So water is life. Awake is premium purified water treated through that strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. And no matter whether for children, for adults, whatever you're looking for, 330 ml, we have 500 ml, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, even 1.5 liters for those who always want more. Like me, I drink a lot of water. I start my day by drinking water. They also have 19-liter jars for offices and homes. All you must do now is drink Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. So choose a bottle of Awake Purified Drinking Water today and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, every one, a donation is made to the National Cardiothoracic Center. And for me, that's the highlight. It's heartwarming. It's another quality product by Casapreco Company Limited. For bulk purchases, just give them a call on this number, 0262 351 251. 0262 351 251. And this advert, of course, is FDA approved. Stay with us on the AM show, because up next, Bernice Lansah will be walking you through what former President Mahama has been saying about stabilizing our economy and what he would do should he be given the nod. All of that on the AM show up next.
There is so much to do in the beautiful mountainside townships, but the fun begins literally minutes after you turn off the main Accra-Kumasi highway at Linda Door. Just there on your right, no more than a few kilometers in, is the Bunso Eco Park. This popular destination is the first stop for most Kwewu Easter pilgrims, and it really does have a lot going for it, in spite of its rather humble-looking frontage. For starters, this place packs some hefty heritage. It's been here a lot longer than you thought.
So how long has this place been here?
Oh, since 1935, this place has been here.
What? Since before I was born?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, and it's always been an eco park?
Oh, first it was for research purpose. So they come here for plant research, and later it turned to tourist attraction.
Okay, here we are, the beginning of another exciting canopy walk. But first, some stairs.
Okay, go. You can go.
Okay.
For some reason, this last one, even though it's the lowest, it seems to be the most precarious, because look, so shaky, held together by strings. I really feel like Indiana Jones on this one. Wow, it's crazy shaky. Huh. I have to remind myself that there's no way it can tip me over, but that's an act of faith. Not easy. Okay, we seem to be coming to the end of it. All right, solid wood at last. Whew. Yes, conquerors. Trust me, this is definitely worth it. I don't know how many of these things I walked over, 5 or 6 or however many they were. Each one was a different experience. Not as high as Kakum, but you will not care, because this seems to have a little bit of an edge of danger to it. I mean, you're safe, nothing will happen, but it doesn't feel like it while you're in the middle. Trust me, experience it for yourself.
Okay, 1 down, 2 to go. Let's see what this zipline business is all about, shall we? One thing you can't help but notice is the detailed attention the staff pay to safety. Every buckle, every fastening, every clasp is tightened, stretched, and tested to ensure that you are as safe as can be before you take to the air. Okay, now I think I'm braver than the average man and usually game to try anything at least once. But on this, my first encounter with a zip line, I must confess, I am terrified. There is a moment, just a couple of seconds while your harness is being hooked onto the zip line, when there is absolutely nothing between you and the open 30-foot drop to the ground. All you are standing on is a thin strip of wood the size of a kitchen stool with nothing holding you and nothing to hold on to. One little gust of wind, one little nudge, one little slip of foot, and you will fall. But then the harness goes onto the line with a loud click, and you are safe again.
2, 3, 4, move.
Oh my God!
Whoa!
Oh wow, that was fun. Let's do it again.
Oh my God!
Here we go! Whoa!
Okay, 2 down, and I think I may have saved the scariest for last. Behold, the adult swing. And behold, some more stairs. I can feel it, the creeping, crawling sensation of something cold and sinewy climbing up my leg, through my stomach, and up into my chest cavity to clamp clammy tentacles of fear, dread, and apprehensive anticipation over my already overzealous cardiac blood pump. I feel like I might just die of fright even before they send me flying to what seems like my inevitable crashing demise in this heinous hellbasket.
Jesus Christ.
Hey. Here we go.
God.
You know what? Once you're airborne, the toe-curling, ball-shrinking, blood-freezing, bile-curdling, sweat-spraying, tear duct flooding, synapse-blasting, nerve-shredding, cortisol-squirting feeling of tombstone cold fear disappears immediately. Suddenly, you're a child in a playground, sailing on the wind, soaring feet first towards heaven with the biggest smile on your face.
This is so good. Ah. The wind. Whew. Ah.
Okay, enough. How do I get out of this thing? Of course. More stairs.
Try it. I promise you, nothing will leave your stress better. Take my word for it and don't leave it too late. When you come, tell them Kojo sent you.
Hello, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for staying here on the AM show. It's now time for the second part of our big stories, and we are talking politics. I'm sure you may be aware that the NDC's flag bearer aspirant, John Dramani Mahama, went through his vetting process yesterday. And after that, he engaged or spoke to supporters and addressed the press. And he has been saying that at the heart of his campaign is fixing the country's economic situation. He says government has demonstrated that it is incapable of running the affairs, for which reason he's launching another bid to become the NDC's flag bearer in the 2024 election. So that is his central message, if you want to put it that way. Now, the big question is, as party executives go to elect who their flag bearer will be, what should they look out for? Is it simply because, oh, he was former president before? What exactly should we be looking out for? And that conversation is what we are going to be having. And by extension, once they select those people to be their aspirants, what should you and I be looking out for in who the next president of Ghana should be? I've been joined in studio by Dr. Tutu Bwanhi. He's a lecturer, political marketing at the University of Education, Winnipeg. Good morning to you, Doc, and thank you so much for joining us once again. And I've also got Dr. John Osai-Kwapong. He is a CDD fellow, to share their thoughts with us. So let's start off on that big note. So the NDC has been accused over time of giving John Dramani Mahama too much advantage. I remember when they held their national congress here, we had one of the executive members speaking, and the question was, if you have so many people who are aspiring, why does it appear that you're giving John Dramani Mahama an edge over the others? What should the NDC members who are going to be voting for who their flag bearer will be, what should they be looking out for? So far, we've seen Dr. Dufour come up. John Dramani Mahama has put his head out. There's also former Ashanti regional, Ashanti mayor, Kojo Bonsu, and others. What should they be looking out for?
All right. Good morning to viewers. Good morning to you once again. Just one quick correction. I'm a lecturer in marketing.
Okay.
And a consultant in political marketing issues.
Right.
So I think that I always say that, delegates always have responsibilities when it comes to electing candidates, to lead their party, and if possible, to lead Ghana as a nation. And the reasons for saying that is about picking a candidate who has the capabilities, who has vision, who has understanding of the task, before him, to execute it and execute it very well, to the satisfaction of those who voted for him or her. And when, over the years, let me narrow it down to the 1992 dispensation, we realized that voters in general have not done this country justice. And I would also want to state that delegates have also not done this country any good, to the extent that normally the delegates will present candidates that they are comfortable choosing in terms of people who have names within the party, people that, on hindsight, they believe have what it takes, to lead the party without any scientific guidance, to their choices. And so when you look at the way ex-president of blessed memory, Jerry John Rawlings, was elected to lead the NDC, obviously as a founder of the party and as somebody who has been in government, and therefore the delegates believe that let's give him the leadership mandate for him to lead the party. So he led, and getting to the 2000, the NDC lost the election. And again, coming to MPP in 2000, the delegates also brought Kufuor. Obviously, Kufuor was not somebody who was really known, to the Ghanaian populace, but he got the mandate of the people and came. At a point in time, you realize that it was the election, from that angle, were people with names, right? Then it got to certain degrees that we were electing people at the national level based on, partisan divides. And it is now getting to a situation that people are looking at individuals, and that is where I want to narrow down. All right. Now, if you check, research that has been done, and one particular theory, which has to do with the ticket balancing theory, it outlines certain specific characteristics, about candidates that people should look out for, especially from candidates and from the national voter. And one of such has to do, education. Let me put it within certain contexts, demographic variables, right? So we're talking about people's age. And so we saw that in 2012, even 2008, when John Mahama was presented as the vice presidential candidate, the NDC actually positioned him per his age as somebody of the youth category. And therefore, they were pulling the youth to the NDC, and it really worked for them. Again, getting to, 2012, that same brand of the youth came up, which also worked, Another thing has to do with experience. Experience in terms of your knowledge and other experiences within politics.
So if I get you right, the delegates who are going to be choosing these aspirants for us should be looking at how old this person is.
Exactly.
His level of experience.
Exactly.
And what again?
Electability.
Right.
Ability to pull votes, to the party. All right. That is also very significant. Then they talk about the home region advantage, where you are coming from, and your home region. How possible is it that you can equally pool votes? And you realize that that has informed basically certain decisions from MPP and NDC. NDC choosing vice president from central region, because they believe that the vice president elect, would, as it were, be able to pool vote from central region. Okay. And then the MPP also believes in the 3 northern regions. Apart from that, they look at the religion, all right, which has to do with the Islam religion. And so they combine these two, to
try and have a balance.
Exactly.
Right. I'll come back to you for more on this, but let me get Dr. Akakpo's initial thoughts on this subject matter. Doc, Dr. Tutubuahin just said that sometimes these delegates do not do us a favor because of the kind of aspirants they choose on behalf of their party. So it's almost as if you're left with no choice but what you're given to choose from. What are your initial thoughts on what should be the most important things delegates should focus on when they go to elect their flag bearers?
Good morning and thank you. I think, ultimately every political party wants to win an election. And so whenever they are going into an election season where they have to choose the flag bearer for a presidential race, that I believe is the foremost thing on their mind. And because they want to win, then they have to start asking themselves, among the candidates who have presented themselves for the flag bearership race, which candidate gives us our best shot at winning the election, at winning the presidency. And so that is when then they start factoring things like who knows the candidate, how well known is the candidate, what sort of experience does the candidate bring to the ticket, what kinds of challenges does the candidate also face in terms of, if they've been in the political arena for a long time, what kind of, history, in terms of his or her politics, credentials, etc., are they bringing to the ticket? And I think that's what delegates would have to factor in to ultimately decide, well, we think if we present candidate A or if we present candidate B, that gives us our best shot in winning this coming election.
So, as we have it now, we've seen the NDC's John Dramani Mahama talk about what his focus will be. Alan Tremantin has spoken about the Great Transformational Plan, which he has been pushing across the country. For you, do you get that sense that our delegates have reached that point where it is the message and the things that you have outlined that they will focus on? Have we reached that point in our democracy?
I think we have. So the calculation of the delegates the calculus of the delegates may be slightly different because, again, winning is really key for the political party, and therefore, in all of the other factors that will be driven by, the primary one, I believe, would be who gives us our best shot. But once you move from the primary season into the actual national race, then it is now up to the party to say, how do we frame our political message in such a way that we can make a case as to why we should be the party that is elected? Because remember, yes, your partisans, your party people would, quote unquote, always vote for you, or at least most of your own party would vote for you. But to get over that 50% plus one vote line, you would still need some who are in the middle, or even see the extent to which you can plug a few votes from your opponent's camp as well. And for me, that is where the messaging becomes extremely important. Which issues are you going to, highlight? How are you going to frame the conversation in such a way that you can attract the voters that you need to push you over the line? If you look at 2017 Afrobarometer, there was a question about the main reason why you voted for the candidate that you voted for. And the top two reasons were, and it was actually split 42%, but it was the candidate I thought would better manage the affairs of the country. And then the other one was the policies and the message that was proposed by the candidates. And so I think, in as much as our party affiliation drives us to the polls to vote, I also believe that we do factor in some of these other issues in terms of the economic issues and some of the governance issues as well. We saw that clearly in 2016 in terms of how the MPP framed the 2016 election, making it really about the economy and then some other governance issues as well. And you are starting to see signals of that from former President John Mahama. The other day when he launched his campaign platform, he talked about some governance reforms. And so you can see that he's going to do a combination of, the economic challenges and how we can, further get out of the economic challenges that we face. But he's also talked about some, a number of governance issues, strengthening anti-corruption, institutions, making some, moving the constitutional reform process forward, things like that. So I think it's going to be those two things. And the question then becomes the extent to which voters then buy into that message and decide whether they want to give him another mandate or not.
Quickly on this, before I go to Dr. Tutu Buahin, we saw with the NPP during the last elections and the previous ones, they created catchphrases and things that stuck to the people's minds. Now, you talk about John Dramani Mahama's message on the economy, on constitutional reforms. It appears that he's touching on almost everything. You hear Alan Tremantin, he's talking about the Great Transformational Plan. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's too early or it is just right to start that kind of messaging now and be as specific as possible using catchphrases that will trickle down even into the campaign for the general elections? Your quick thoughts on that?
Yes, I don't think it's too early. I think the earlier you start to court voters, the better it is for you. Because again, things would happen. Some days your message would resonate. Other issues may come up that may dent your message. You would have to sort of keep reinforcing the message. You would have to keep reaching out to different groups, different places. And so I think between, we are already in March, March 2023 is almost over. I don't think it's too early. Yes, it gets to a point where I think voters may experience a little bit of, political fatigue. But at the same time, I think you need enough time to be able to really travel the length and breadth of the country, pushing your message that it's never too early to start.
Dr. Boahen, let me put you on the spot. Let's take the two main political parties, because they are the parties that have put up, people have started coming out to say, I want to be an aspirant, etc. When you look at the two parties, which of its members do you think would have a hard time making a decision on who their flag bearer should be?
I think that from what I'm seeing, from the perspective of the NDC, it is possible, higher percentage, that JDM would be an easy pick. On the side of the MPP, it's becoming quite difficult among delegates, with the choice between the current Vice President, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and Alan Chiramatin, because when you check from the MPP tradition, they believe in loyalty, party loyalty, and they believe in first come, first serve. And hitherto, it was not an issue of performance. But you realize that the introduction of Bawumia into the MPP politics, is trying to change that kind of culture where, majority or some people within the ranks of the MPP believe that Bawumia has what it takes, to actually lead. And I realized that, I think about a fortnight ago, when the Vice President was visiting Kumasi to attend the Two Force program, majority of MPs, accompanied him there. And the news from that was an indication that majority of the MPs were in support of him. All right. Now, you see that this is going to create some kind of challenge for the delegates. And so, for me, between the NDC and the MPP, NDC, from the tangent that I see things moving, the progress they are making, I see that JDM is likely to be the
So for you, it's easier for NDC delegates and executives to make a decision on JDM compared to what MPP delegates have to do because of the cementing. But it's interesting, Dr. Kwapong. It's not clear when the NPP will begin its process to elect its flag bearer, and some of the persons interested in the sport have raised concerns about that. Former Greek Minister Dr. Ifeanyi Akoto says he can't wait any longer, so he launched his campaign. We've seen Alan Chiramatin launch his campaign as well. Mr. Adainimo has also launched his campaign. What is your appreciation of how this is likely to affect the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, if he decides to be the next flag bearer or to contest for that position for the NPP?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to, the Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, I think in terms of the timeline where the others have been able to, resign their positions and officially launch their campaigns, he is not in a position to be able to do that. But at the same time, his position as vice president comes with a little bit of an advantage in terms of the timeline, right? That he's still involved in everyday governance. He's still involved in everyday issues. So he still gets the visibility. He still gets people to campaign on his behalf, do things that reminds NPP delegates that we are interested in having him as a flag bearer, although he has not officially said it. I also don't think that he's not interested in throwing his hat in the race. But for now, until the NPP comes out with an official calendar, he would have to rely on those who are interested in his candidacy to keep pushing it for him. But I don't think it places him at any disadvantage because of his official role as vice president. He still gets to do things. He still gets to be involved in everyday governance. And so he still gets the visibility that he would need to be part of this flag bearer race.
You say that his position as vice president gives him an advantage. There are others who think otherwise. They think that based on the current happenings, the current economic situation, people's disappointment in how the governance has been carried out since especially the second tenure started, it potentially could derail his plans to become the flag bearer.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest headaches he faces. Not so much though within the party, right? I don't think that within the party that is much of a headache as opposed to in the general election, right? I mean, within the party, he's built, I think between 2016 and now, he's really built strong inroads into the party. And so I think that would really pay off potentially in being able to secure the flag bearership race. I think what would be the challenge is in the general election where he now has to compete against the NDC candidate, and that is where a lot of the economic arguments that he made in 2016 and the way the economy has turned out, some of the challenges that the economy has faced, I think would be brought to the forefront again. And I'm sure he would have to find a way to deal with those challenges, explain why some of the arguments that were made didn't turn out the way we expected it to turn out, things like that. And I think that for me would be the biggest challenge in terms of the economic messaging. I don't think it would be so much a problem for him in the primary as it would be in the general election. Every so often you see people resurrecting a lot of his tweets, a lot of his posts, a lot of his videos. And I think that is where he would have to find a way to respond to all of those things in the general election. I don't think it would hurt him that much in the party's primary.
Do you want to take a bite at this?
So with regards to the Dr. Bayomia's question, with regards to the economic disappointments, kind of perception.
Because that was what was marketed to us, that he was the economic wizard, the one who was going to do that kind of work on behalf of his government. And so people find it very easy to place the burden at his doorstep. I mean,
Yeah, so more especially when people feel that he's the head of the economic management team and that he could have done a lot to salvage, the issue. Now, when you actually understand environmental effects on strategic plans, certain macroeconomic or macro environmental factors that can emerge, especially on the political scene, little effort can be put in, probably to change the ties. All right, the moment it hits you, it will push your efforts aside. And you see, with the kind of economy that we have built for ourselves, as Ghanaians, I can assure you that no political leader, can withstand any external shock when it hits
But Doc,
our
then
economy.
is that not the problem? You are a marketing lecturer.
Yes.
So, with this in mind and with this perspective,
Yeah.
they market
Yeah.
themselves to us as those who can solve the problem.
Yes.
And so once you market this phone to me and say that this phone will do A, B, C, D, E.
Exactly.
Without taking into consideration that, okay, well, this one was not manufactured here. So maybe when you bring it within this climate or within this space, you will not get it as this. Because you're talking about external shocks and the structure of our economy. But that's not how they marketed themselves
but
to
you
us.
see that the illustration you are giving, products, tangible products even have standards.
Yeah.
So little impact from certain environmental factors like weather and stuff. All right. But when you look at the nature of politics, it is human-centered.
Right.
All right. So it requires human understanding, your knowledge, your efforts. All right. So when those factors begin to have some effects on your economy, and the knowledge and understanding, and more especially the structures, are not well built to take care of those shocks, it becomes a bit problematic.
But if you market this phone to me, sorry, Doc, I just need to understand what you're saying. If you market this phone to me and tell me it can perform at this capacity, and you don't add that, well, maybe in your country you didn't have that kind of fast internet, that kind of reliable internet to give you the efficiency you want. It may perform at this level. And that's why I'm saying that is it not a problem with their marketing and how they market themselves to us?
So it has to do with the promises set when you are campaigning, all right, and the message that comes with it, and the deliveries. So there is a huge gap between promises set and the deliveries. And that is where politicians would need to understand that if you are branding the products and you brand it in such a way that the expectations around it are so high, the little drop in terms of performance would affect the brand, all right? And it will not make the brand appealing. And that is why normally people believe that, voters believe that when you set a promise and you don't deliver, then of course it will bring some kind of perception against you and they feel that you have actually failed. All right. So that is where the issue is. Now, concerning the question that you asked, Dr. Kwapong, you see, the perception around Dr. Bawumia and the propaganda that has been raised against him, is something that if the MPP mean to work on it, they can work on it. And I don't really also see it to be so problematic from a marketing perspective or from a political marketing perspective. All right. So it is about the messaging and how he can put his team together to position him above the propaganda. All right. Because his name has actually penetrated. Even school children, knows they are aware of that name. And so getting a message, to propel that brand is what the MPP should be looking out for.
Dr. Kwapong, should delegates who are making a decision on who their party's aspirant be, should they know from the word go who is going to be chosen as a flag bearer? And does that have any impact on the dynamics of any of these candidates whose names that we've mentioned?
Well, I think some, certain candidates would come to the flag bearer race in the minds of the delegates as having greater strengths than others or more advantage than others, right? On the NDC side, for me, it's very obvious. I actually don't see anybody being able to topple the former president. I mean, I just don't see it. I think I know that he is from all the signs, I think he's the presumptive flag bearer for the party. I don't see anybody being able to topple him because of, his standing in the party, having led the party twice before, etc., etc., etc. He's well known, all of that. So I think on the NDC side, it will definitely be former president.
What my question is, Doc, is whether these people, John Dramani Mahama, Alan Tremartin, should tell us who they are going to pair with, as possible vice presidents. Should the delegates know ahead of time? And will that in any way change the dynamics for any of them?
It potentially could. But I think they also like to follow the process where probably, I'm sure if you asked any of the candidates, who would you select as your vice president, their answer is going to be, well, let me first win the nomination because, I want to make sure.
Shouldn't it be the other way around? I mean, and I want to take your thoughts on that because we've seen how important the role is, or we know how important that role is. If you're going to be heading the economic management team, don't the delegates deserve to know, I don't like this pairing, so I wouldn't choose it. I prefer that pairing. And so I will make a decision on that before they go to elect the flag bearers.
I mean, it will be very helpful, as you said. I mean, it will be especially the critical role of the vice president as the head of the economic management team, right? And if you're going to make the economy a centerpiece of your campaign, then it would be good for the delegates to say, well, if you paired with person A as opposed to person B, does that increase our chances? How then will the voters also perceive us in terms of our ability to manage the economy? Should they give us the mandate? But probably if you ask for that, I'm sure the candidates would say, well, let me win the nomination first and then we can have that conversation.
Doc, are we putting the horse before the cart in this matter?
At all. You see, I think I've stated here. So when you raised that question, I was like, yeah. You see, when we're discussing the NDC some time ago,
the last time you came into the
I think I made this point. And to me, it is a straight yes. All right. Why? Because we've gotten to a point that I don't see a football team, the coach not naming the team ahead of a match. All right. I think it was Otto Addo who decided to hide, his squad from Ghanaians prior to the Nigerian game. All right. But if you check all standards and principles, you see that normally they name their team 8 hours, 6 hours to the match. Now, you see, I've been advocating for this, and this is what I believe, that even apart from naming the running mates, all right, which used to be the norm when we were in secondary schools and at the universities, all right, I think that the potential candidates should be, by now, they should be naming even their ministers.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you don't wait till you hit governance for us to vote for you. You see, in governance, the moment you are voted for and you assume office, your duties start from there. And you have no excuse for you to come back 4 years to come and tell us that you were not prepared for it, we should give you more time, and that of thing. And that has been the song that politicians have been singing to us. And it is because when they are preparing for the contest, they don't put their team together. So it will take them 6 months in office to name their team, and even sometimes more than that. So how do you expect productivity? You understand? When we expect you to be delivering. So for me, the question that you ask is a straight yes. They should be able to name who their running mates will be. They should start thinking about their ministers, and they should start thinking about key objectives and policy directions.
So it's not just about a campaign message you're throwing around,
no,
but you're doing the real work.
Exactly, because that would inform delegates, of your objectives, the policy direction, and the people that you put in charge for them to execute certain things. So, for instance, if you are talking about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is going to be a flagship policy, then who is there? And what vision do you have for that person? And what vision does that person also carry to make entrepreneurship a hub of industrialization in this country? Now, if you are able to get that conversation moving and setting this conversation right, of course, productivity will be high, governance will not be that difficult, and every time that you get people elected, we don't have to be disappointed.
Right, interesting. So we'll be wrapping up the conversation shortly, but Doc, this angle of it brings to mind another conversation that has come up, and especially for a lot of millennials and Gen Zs on social media. You hear the conversations about, oh, who our potential first lady will be and how the person looks. And all these things, matter to some voters because for them, image, branding and all that, is that anything we should even be considering in the first place? What the person does, and we've seen over time how, especially first ladies, do certain works. They have foundations, and they seem to be sadly marketing themselves as good support systems. Is that anything that should even come to the table?
Well, politics is sometimes, an interesting sport, but every politician, especially an aspiring president, would have to pull whatever asset they can get to help them win an election. So if that means they have to draw on particular strengths that their spouses bring to the team, they definitely would do that. I mean, I'm sure we all remember the 2016 MPP campaign event where the current second lady, I think she spoke in like maybe 3 or 4 different languages, trying to make the case as to why the MPP should be elected into office, and how a number of people found that to be very endearing. Right. I think all of those things do matter. So the presidential candidates, whatever assets they have in terms of whoever they can bring into their fold to say, if you approach this particular group, you'll be able to make an even much stronger case for me. That's why they would bring in, former presidents. That's why they would bring in former ministers. That's why they would look for endorsements from different individuals and different groups. So yes, you want ultimately an election to be about the bread and butter issues that faces the ordinary people, but you also cannot rule out the influences of some of these things in our political dynamics.
And then let me just chip this in as we wrap up the conversation. I'm just thinking about what happened on Friday in Parliament and other things that happened within the NDC and the other political parties, and the potential of whoever they select not only to be the president of the country, but also manage or seem to be a respected force within the party when it comes to solving real critical issues. And we've seen John Dramani Mahama do that a couple of times with the party's elections and Cape Coast voting for their youth organizer when there was a bit of a contention between the candidates. We saw him intervene. We saw him also intervene in the matter of the new leadership and all that. Should that matter to the delegates, even though this person is going to be the president of the entire country, should that be a matter of focus as well?
Yes, that should really matter to the delegates, because it's also going to matter to the voters. If you look at what happened in Parliament on Friday and some of the public commentary, I think the last thing that the NDC wants is to be in a position where some of these things chip away at the party's unity. At the same time, what they also want to prevent is the perception in the minds of the public that well, I mean, because I've read comments like, oh, they are not serious, they're already in chaos. Those are not the kinds of perceptions that you want voters to start forming in their minds as you prepare for a major election, which is why I think, regardless of how different sections of the party feel about what happened in Parliament on Friday, it would be in their best interest to quickly close it out, whatever it is. If the former president has to intervene, iron out whatever differences and quickly move on. For me, it would be in their best interest, because the more it, and some of the, if you look at some of the language that they're using, right, they are being very quote unquote unkind to each other, and nothing would make the MPP more happier than to see cracks, within the NDC as you go into a major election. And my thing is, so you lost this legislative battle over trying to prevent these nominees from being approved. But are you going to get so drawn into it that you lose sight of the much bigger picture, which is your desire to win election 2024 and reset the country on a different economic path as you are, as you're trying to win that election? Yeah, they will just have to move on quickly. I mean, it will be in the best interest of the party if they are able to iron out those differences quickly and really, really, really move on. They can't afford the luxury of having this thing drag any further.
But then how do they change that perception that has been created in the minds of a lot of people that these people are not one? They don't seem to have one voice. Because remember, there was a directive from the party saying that this is the way we are going. How does that affect the image of the party, even in the perspective of the general elections, and how the general voter is thinking? Is this a group of people I can trust? Do they even have a united front? Or, considering the numbers, this may be much ado about nothing?
You see, one, I think parties should stop issuing directives to members of parliament. Yes, parties can state their position on a given issue. But for me, I think it is an affront to representative democracy to say that, therefore, we direct all our parliamentarians to vote in this particular way. Yes, I understand the politics of the legislative process. Sometimes on very critical issues, on policy matters, you want to whip all of your people, in line to take a particular policy position. That I don't necessarily have an issue with. But sometimes some of these directives, I think our parties should start rethinking on what issues they want to give directives to their MPs. And particularly on this issue of nominees, I personally could not believe that the minority leadership sincerely believed they could, get their party into line, because a lot goes into for me, I don't know why they picked that fight over nominees. I would have rather they picked the fight over some major policy issue where you had a much bigger chance of being able to hold all your 136 together, right? But not when it comes to voting for nominees. I mean, people have friendships in parliament. People have been with each other all these years. I found it very difficult that none of these nominees could count on even one NDC MP to vote for them. So again, you're right. That perception that, and again, the other challenge that the NDC faces is, I mean, let's be honest, even if all 275 parliamentarians show up and they all vote strictly along party lines, how many times can the NDC actually win a vote in parliament, right? Because the MPP, save for absenteeism, the MPP would always outnumber them by that one or two votes, which is why, for me, they have to be more strategic in the kinds of fights they want to pick in parliament and the statements they want to make with those fights they pick in parliament.
Right, Dr. Tutubuahin, we've spoken about a couple of issues. The first has to do with if it's really important who is chosen as flag bearer based on the kind of support system they have, i.e. First Lady and all that? Is it even important? And what's the percentage of contribution to the person's fortunes? And then we've also been talking about whoever is chosen and the ability or level of authority they exert in terms of solving party issues and dealing with cracks.
So the First Lady issue first. You realize that, you know, we have gotten to a certain era where it is not just the candidate alone, but all people around him, even including the party leadership matter. All right, because these are individuals around you as a candidate who also pull some votes to support your candidature. All right, and so if you have seen or observed carefully, since you introduced that question, you will see that for some time now, the campaigns of the wives of our presidents and even the vice president have been very, very prominent. And so we saw that in Samira Baumi.
Right.
All right. And you see that they were able to, she was able to bring some votes, you know, to the MPP, especially with the North. All right. And again, with the Islam religion. Now, with regards to the abilities and competence of leaders being able to manage cracks within parties, it is very important. Very, very important, because as a leader, you would need that kind of unifying abilities and competencies. And mostly it depends on the kind of relationship that you build with your cohorts. And if you are not able to do that, then of course you are throwing your campaign into jeopardy. And that is one thing that, you know, it should be done. I think that about 3 days ago, I was in a seminar of African leaders, you know, in Ghana, you know, and one of the key issues that actually came was about that.
This one. Thank you so much. Dr. Tutu Boahen is a lecturer of political marketing, UEW, and he consults on political marketing. And Dr. John Akakpo is a CDD fellow. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. We've been talking about the importance of what delegates should look out for when they're choosing a candidate. Let me take you now quickly to the Black Star Square. My colleague Blaise Atsuga is there for us. The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is still in town, and she has a few things to do there. Let's take you there.
99.7 FM on all of our affiliate partners across the country and online as well. This is our continuous coverage of that special coverage we promised you earlier. We're there at the airport when that historic visit took place, where we had the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, touched down here in Accra to begin a series of engagements that will happen throughout the rest of the week. She's not just coming to Ghana, but she'll be in Tanzania and Zambia as well. So it's part of a long week for her, touring a number of African countries. But we are here at the Black Star Square bringing you a special coverage of that major policy speech that she'll be making to my right here. We'll give you a sense of what's happening. But for now, what you see is a group of people who are waiting in earnest to hear from the second family. Well, we'll be hearing from the Vice President more importantly, because she will be making a major policy speech. And so let's give you a sense of what's happening. To my right here, you would obviously be expecting that the Vice President will show up from that side and will be giving the speech from what you see on the screens. And then we also have some people in the front row who will be listening in to that speech. We have some cultural performances that may be taking place also from here. I must say that security for the area is well intact, and so all of these people you see here came here as early as 6 to 7 a.m. and it's the reason for which we can be sure that all of the people who are listening into the lecture are safe and sound. But we're going to be having a long day because a lot of people will be making some remarks before that major policy speech. But we're still here at the Black Star Square just giving you a feel of what's happening. And there are some people who are also waiting in earnest just to listen to that speech by the US Vice President. So let's try and engage some of the audience and people waiting to listen to that lecture. I have a lady with me here. Where, correct? That's your name? Yes. How do you feel waiting in earnest and waiting on the Vice President of the United States?
I can't wait for the event to start. Yes. I was actually looking forward to this event and I'm really excited to be here.
For you, you're a woman and this is the Vice President of the United States. Are you taking inspiration, for instance, from this visit?
Yes, I feel very empowered to be here, and she being a woman, I'm also a woman as well, and I'm so happy to be here that a lady is taking up the stage to give this important and significant speech today, and I'm really excited to be here to listen to it.
You've been watching her tour a number of places here in the country. What stood out for you, and what are you looking forward to as she moves on with the tour of duty?
Okay, I'm looking forward to this speech today. I want to know how the ties between the USA and Ghana would grow, how it is going to, the policies they're going to implement, how is it going to affect Ghana, what is in for us. That's why I'm also here to support. Yeah.
You have any message for other Ghanaians who have missed out the opportunity?
They should watch from other social media platforms. If they're not here in person, they should do that as well. Yes, and don't worry, people will talk about it, so they will post about it, and we're going to brag about it.
So that's the excitement that we're all feeling here. A number of individuals here who are joining us for that lecture that we're experiencing. So let's see if we can engage some other people who are here with us. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Are you excited to be here, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to seeing Kamala Harris in person. I followed her on Twitter, and if the opportunity presents itself for me to be physical in person with her, I think I better take it. That's why I'm here.
I see. You may not be a woman, but there are a lot of women taking inspiration because of her visit. For you, how is a visit personally giving you an inspiration?
First of all, I don't think you need to be a woman to take inspiration from a woman. Inspiration taking is all about positivity. So once you're able to gauge anything that's positive in a woman, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, you take inspiration from such people. And I think Kamala Harris, she's proven to be a positive human being from what she stands for and where she's coming from, rising to the Vice President of the United States of America. I think the whole world needs to take inspiration from someone like that.
In terms of democracy, do you feel that there are some lessons that we could pick up as a country as well?
Most definitely. America is a beacon of democracy, as we all know. And a young democracy like ours, we definitely have a lot to take. I mean, tolerance, freedom of speech, and all of those tenets of democracy, I think we can learn from America.
I see that. What's your name again?
My name is Kishuale.
Okay, good to be with you. And
my colleague Blessed Soga at the Black Star Square, we will definitely take you there for more on that visit by the U.S. Vice President to Ghana. We understand that she's got a litany of activities to do, so we will let you know at what point what she's doing, but it will be all for AM show from Benjamin and myself. We are grateful that you can make time to be with us. Up next is News Desk with Samuel Kojo Brace, and he will definitely take you back to the Black Star Square. Do stay and enjoy the rest of your day.